Good morning, I'm Julian Reed, and welcome to Today in Parliament.
And I'm Janae Noel Ferguson. Welcome to another broadcast. Today in Parliament focuses on present legislation, and we also take a look back at past debates.
Well, today we expect Golden Gates MP Shane Gibson, who has responsibility for post-Hurricane Matthew recovery and relief efforts, to continue a communication he started at the last sitting of the House. Now, when the House last met, Gibson suspended his communication to give members an opportunity to speak to the 50th anniversary of Majority Rule, and we'll recap that later.
While other members' statements are also expected, Minister of Transport and Aviation Glenys Hanna-Martin expected to speak on the Bahamas Maritime Authority and the Flight Information Region, which deals with the country's airspace. Now, last week, the landmark agreement was reached with the United States, signaling the birth of a new stream of revenue and a new job sector for the country.
It was also expected that the boundaries report would be tabled today. We've, however, learned from that commission's chair, House Speaker Dr. Kendall Major, that the report is still not ready. The House Speaker spoke to this issue back on January 9th, when the report was initially expected to be tabled, citing a number of factors for the delay, including low voter registration numbers.
However, the chair anticipates and will continue to anticipate the report from the governing members and also the opposition members with respect to recommendations as we go forward. Now, I've noted that this is a very unique situation in this session because of some mitigating factors, one of which is there has been a leak of some proposed information that made it on social media and in the dailies, much to the chagrin of the chair, and it certainly undermines the process and makes this somewhat unprecedented, that we who are sworn to secrecy somehow through our deliberations, matters such as this is leaked to the public. And so that has caused great contention within the rank and file of the commission, and it is important that you know that the chair is certainly displeased about that. Secondly, there's also been a change in membership midstream with the apparent revocation of the member for East Grand Bahama and the new member, now the member for St. Anne's. There's been a slowing of the process, and that also has been unprecedented in that regard. There's no fault there, however, it is what it is. And thirdly, of course, the low voter turnout is a factor. And so I'm advised that we are above or there about 500 persons per day, but there's a greater capacity and opportunity for more persons of the public to be registered. The Parliamentary Registration Department is prepared. They would like the report as soon as we are able to do so. And so I admonish all members to set an example by registering yourself without delay, and to encourage those of the persons that we influence to register as soon as practical, as there are many opportunities for all persons to register at the many centers throughout our Commonwealth. Honorable members, be so advised.
Well, Dr. Major told us this morning that the situation regarding the Boundaries Commission remains the same, and that report is still not ready for tabling. Well, also from the House of Assembly last week, Central and South Eleuthera MP Damian Gomez announced that he would be stepping down from running in his constituency in the next general elections.
That's right. Gomez did indicate, however, that he continues to support the governing party and would remain available for service whenever needed. Gomez has often spoken of the slow pace of economic development in his constituency over the last 4 years, and he also resigned as Minister of State for Legal Affairs 2 years ago. In his personal statement that he read into the record, he discussed the challenges facing his constituency. He wished residents well and thanked them for their support.
South Eleuthera remains amongst the poorest districts in our Commonwealth and in dire need of economic attention to ports and other infrastructure aimed at reducing the cost of living and of conducting business. We have championed her cause as best we could. In spite of my best efforts, the private sector has not responded as timeously as expected with Scotiabank abandoning the district altogether in 2015 and being replaced by the Bank of the Bahamas. It is hoped that in the immediate future, the principals of Cotton Bay, Seychelles, and Winding Bay properties will commence or recommence their respective hotel developments and thereby adhere to their obligations created by heads of agreements with the government of the Bahamas. Central Eleuthera has fared better with hotel and second home construction at levels above those I met in May 2012. In contrast, the private sector in Central Eleuthera has answered our call for investment and job creation. The Cove Hotel and French Leave on the Bay have inspired a renaissance in Governor's Harbour, with new developments under construction and major renovations planned for Sigatu Hotel under its new ownership, and at Port Latch also under new ownership. Not to be left out, the Coco de Mama Group has indicated to me its continued commitment to the Eleuthera economy. Our investment in the rebirth of the All Eleuthera Regatta and the South Eleuthera Regatta has seen both become major touristic attractions to the constituency, adding to economic and job opportunities. The various homecoming committees throughout Eleuthera are to be commended for their successful efforts at promoting Eleuthera as a tourist destination. We continue to see strong increases in tourism arrivals. Thank you all. My advocacy for a hospital in Eleuthera for the provision of relevant medical services is a matter of public record. The government has recently started the land clearing in preparation for the construction of the new mini hospital in Palmetto Point. We look forward to its completion in the new parliamentary term. We also anticipate the utilization by the Royal Bahamas Police Force and the community of the Workers' House acquired from the Bahamas Hotel Catering and Allied Workers Union 2 years ago. I am happy to report that the youth of our constituency have responded positively to the provision of resources in the public school system. Academic performances have been encouraging, as have their performances in sports, music, and Junkanoo. I have attempted to assure them of our confidence in their abilities by making annual donations of school supplies to each child attending schools in the constituency. Also, I have cooperated with stakeholders across party political lines to revive the Eleuthera Softball Association, which now thrives. Like other sporting bodies, monies have been made available by us to promote the talent of our youth. We have also supported the work of the National Training Agency and its collaboration with the One Eleuthera Foundation in promoting and transmitting trade skills to our youth, preparing them to exploit job opportunities as and when they present themselves. We have also promoted the work of BAMSI and BAIC in the development of agriculture, fisheries, and light manufacturing, funding public meetings and marketing efforts. There's much to be optimistic about if only our people will access the opportunity being afforded them. More by way of policy and leadership needs to be offered to develop the enormous mariculture potential of Eleuthera. It is an untapped economic sector requiring exploitation. We continue to be concerned about the supply of public utilities to consumers. There are far too many disruptions in the supply of electricity and water. Likewise, we are concerned that only one doctor is stationed on an island of 110 miles long with responsibility for medical services to Harbor Island and Spanish Wells as well. We continue to be anxious about improving our road surfaces and preventing road fatalities. These matters require urgent fixing. We shall not be offering for re-election in the 2017 general elections. After prayerful consideration of the party leader's invitation for me to sit out this election, we have decided to accede. The PLP branch is free to choose a new standard bearer. I remain committed to the principles of honesty in public life and transparency in public and private life, values that inspired the formation of the great PLP. I am available to the PLP and to the people of this Commonwealth whenever the opportunity for renewed public service represents itself. We thank our supporters in Central and South Eleuthera for their friendship, loyalty, and commitment. Without you, we would not have been able to achieve that which we have succeeded in accomplishing. I also thank our detractors, whose criticisms have assisted us in focusing on important issues with clarity and resolution. Thank you all for the honor of being your voice in Parliament. God bless the island of Eleuthera and the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
Well, Gibson also provided an update last week on repairs from islands impacted following Hurricane Matthew. Gibson is the MP for Golden Gates. Now, he noted that the work continues to bring hundreds negatively impacted to a sense of normalcy. He, however, took issue with those hired to clean up and remove debris from the various communities. Gibson lamented that in New Providence alone, $10 million has been spent on cleanup.
Materials for qualified homeowners to carry out repairs is progressing very well. To date, vouchers valued at just over $1 million have been approved for 664 persons as follows. New Providence, 219 at a cost of some $260,000. Grand Bahama, 428 at a cost of some $764,000. And North Andros, 17 at a cost of some $23,100. That's a total of 664 homes for vouchers at a cost of just over $1 million. I must add, Mr. Speaker, that most of the homes in North Andros actually require building and material. That's why you see a low number of vouchers actually issued in North Andros. Signed agreements are in place with participating suppliers on New Providence, Grand Bahama, North and Central Andros. Mr. Speaker, a considerable number of residents qualify for assistance with the labor and materials. In these instances, NEMA provides the materials and small contractors are engaged to carry out the repairs. The issuance of contracts for labor and material is well underway, and thus far, contracts valued at some $3.5 million have been issued as follows. New Providence, 98 contracts at some $512,000. Grand Bahama, 129 contracts at some $3 million. In North Andros, like I think I mentioned before, we completed some 554 assessments. And what we do in in Andros and in New Providence is we issue letters of intent for the contractors to verify the amounts. And once the amounts are verified, they're brought back to us and contracts are executed. And so in Andros, even though we only have, I think, 5 homes under contract, we've already issued 69 letters of intent that is given to the contractor. And of course, those contractors are required then to submit their proposal to see if it lines up with our technical assessment team. And so a total of 229 contracts have been issued for a cash value of some $3.5 million. Mr. Speaker, I wish to stress that this number represents signed contracts for repairs, which are either in progress or about to commence. The process of negotiating and issuing contracts is ongoing. For instance, while the number of signed contracts for North Andros stands at 5, 68 letters of intent have been issued thus far to contractors for labor and material to repair houses. In New Providence, 616 letters of intent have been issued to contractors. And so even though we only have 98 contracts executed in New Providence, we've already issued 616 letters of intent, and as soon as the contractor returns those letters of intent, the contracts will be executed. Work slowed down over the holidays. However, things will speed up in the upcoming weeks. As was the case with Hurricane Joaquin, there will also be some new construction for qualified persons whose houses were destroyed by Hurricane Matthew, or where the technical assessment finds that it is not structurally feasible for the house to be repaired. However, These numbers have yet to be finalized. The new construction program requires a more intense assessment of the homeowner and the verification of the house and land ownership to ensure that the person is indeed the rightful owner of the house and qualifies for reconstruction. Mr. Speaker, that may slow down the process a bit, but that's very important, because what we find on past hurricanes when we went ahead and built homes is sometimes we build homes for individuals who didn't actually own the land. And once the homes were completed, then the rightful owner came and challenged those persons. Mr. Speaker, the response to the loan program for the public officers and employees of the government corporations for hurricane-related repairs has been overwhelming. To date, 5,128 loans have been approved. The total dollar value of loans approved and paid to date is over $24,109,165. Total amount of loans approved and paid to date is $24,109,165. Successful applicants have up to 5 years to repay the loan at an interest rate of 3%. Mr. Speaker, given the volume of applications, we suspended the acceptance of no application as of Friday, December 9, 2016, to allow for the processing of applications received to that date. And the program actually resumes today, January 9th, for new applications. Cleanup program, Mr. Speaker. The cleanup of debris has been an enormous, challenging, and expensive task, but is nearing completion. In New Providence, $10 million was paid for cleanup activities up to December. The cost in Grand Bahama up to December was close to $1 million. The estimated cost to clean up in North Andros is just under $300,000. In Central Andros, the estimated cost for Central Andros is almost $40,000. And once cleanup operations are completed at the end of the month, the total cost for the activities will be disclosed. Mr. Speaker, I may just elaborate on this cleanup, because one of the reasons why it's costing us so much money is persons who are moving the debris were actually creating their own dump sites on any vacant lot they saw. And so instead of taking the debris to the dump, they dumped them on vacant lots. In one case, they dumped them on Ross Davis Park, and we had to pay somebody to move from Ross Davis Park to take it to the right place. And then we found out, like last weekend in Carmichael, the park was already totally cleaned up, and people came and they dumped more debris on it. So we had to hire truckers to move it again. And so the challenge was finding sufficient dump sites. The challenge was making sure that when persons dumped the debris, that they separated the green debris from the bulk waste. And in many cases, they combined both, which meant that we had to hire people to separate them because the bulk waste went to the dump and the green waste was used to create mulch. And so we still have several sites where we have to continue to create mulch and to continue to separate the bulk waste from the green waste. And so again, it probably cost us money that it should not have cost us. But the whole exercise, I don't think the Bahamas ever saw the level of debris spread throughout the island, throughout the country, as it did after Hurricane Matthew. And so what we did to finalize the program is we actually scoped out all of the constituencies in Nassau and issued contracts. Instead of having people work by the day, which was done during the emergency process, we scoped out the work, hired individuals, and executed contracts for the completion of the debris removal. Repairs, yeah. I think St. Anne's is the only area where we had an issue with the contract that we executed, initially, and then the process now of reissuing a contract. No, St. Anne's, that's Montague. St. Anne's should be completed now. If there are one or two areas in St. Anne's, then it is the isolated cases. St. Anne's is completed. Montague's area we had an issue with, and we had to issue new contracts for Montague. And so those, I think, that contract will be issued today. And so every other constituency should be basically cleaned except for those cases where individuals came and brought more debris. And in the cases of homeowners, is once you move the debris from the front of the house, they then brought more out. And so every time we move it, we had to send people back. So whatever they had, even if it wasn't hurricane related, whatever they had in their yards, they brought it out to the front. Once we cleared the streets, they brought them out again. Construction material, green waste, bulk, everything they brought out. And they just combined everything. So it made it a bit more difficult. Mr. Speaker, repair to public schools. Mr. Speaker, the cost for restoration efforts at public schools now stands at just over $9 million. The The Ministry of Education, Science, and Technology addressed the status of the repair during a press conference last week and advised that these are progressing well, very well, and
Well, as we continue to recap the last sitting of the House, Golden Gates MP Shane Gibson announced the government's commitment in bringing temporary and contractual workers in the public service to a minimum by making them permanent and pensionable.
That's right, Julian. He stressed that thousands within the public service who were temporary could not receive benefits, bank loans, and had no job security. Now he gave a breakdown of the 6,500 people hired by the public service from 2012.
approved for 664 persons as follows. New Providence, 219 at a cost of some $260,000. Grand Bahama, 428 at a cost of some $764,000. And North Andros, 17 at a cost of some $23,100. That's a total of 664 homes for vouchers at a cost of just over $1 million. I must add, Mr. Speaker, that most of the homes in North Andros actually require building and material. That's why you see a low number of vouchers actually issued in North Andros. Signed agreements are in place with participating suppliers on New Providence, Grand Bahama, North, and Central Andros. Mr. Speaker, a considerable number of residents qualify for assistance with the labor and materials. In these instances, NEMA provides the materials and small contractors are engaged to carry out the repairs. The issuance of contracts for labor and material is well underway, and thus far, contracts valued at some $3.5 million have been issued as follows. New Providence, 98 contracts at some $512,000. Grand Bahama, 129 contracts at some $3 million. In North Andros, like I think I mentioned before, we completed some 554 assessments. And what we do in Andros and in New Providence is we issue letters of intent for the contractors to verify the amounts. And once the amounts are verified, they're brought back to us and contracts are executed. And so in Andros, even though we only have, I think, 5 homes under contract, we've already issued 69 letters of intent that is given to the contractor. And of course, those contractors are required then to submit their proposal to see if it lines up with our technical assessment team. And so a total of 229 contracts have been issued for a cash value of some $3.5 million. Mr. Speaker, I wish to stress that this number represents signed contracts for repairs, which are either in progress or about to commence. The process of negotiating and issuing contracts is ongoing. For instance, while the number of signed contracts for North Andros stands at 5, 68 letters of intent have been issued thus far to contractors for labor and material to repair houses. In New Providence, 616 letters of intent have been issued to contractors. And so even though we only have 98 contracts executed in New Providence, we've already issued 616 letters of intent. And as soon as the contractor returns those letters of intent, the contracts will be executed. Work slowed down over the holidays. However, things will speed up in the upcoming weeks. As was the case with Hurricane Joaquin, there will also be some new construction for qualified persons whose houses were destroyed by Hurricane Matthew or where the technical assessment finds that it is not structurally feasible for the house to be repaired. However, these numbers have yet to be finalized. The new construction program requires a more intense assessment of the homeowner and the verification of the house and land ownership to ensure that the person is indeed the rightful owner of the house and qualifies for reconstruction. Mr. Speaker, that may slow down the process a bit, but that's very important, because what we find on past hurricanes when we went ahead and built homes is sometimes we build homes for individuals who didn't actually own the land. And once the homes were completed, then the rightful owner came and challenged those persons. Mr. Speaker, the response to the loan program for the public officers and employees of the government corporations for hurricane-related repairs has been overwhelming. To date, 5,128 loans have been approved. The total dollar value of loans approved and paid to date is $24,109,165. Total amount of loans approved and paid to date is $24,109,165. Successful applicants have up to 5 years to repay the loan at an interest rate of 3%. Mr. Speaker, given the volume of applications, we suspended the acceptance of new application as of Friday, December 9, 2016, to allow for the processing of applications received to that date. And the program actually resumes today, January 9th, for new applications. Cleanup program, Mr. Speaker. The cleanup of debris has been an enormous, challenging, and expensive task, but is nearing completion. In New Providence, $10 million was paid for cleanup activities up to December. The cost in Grand Bahama up to December was close to $1 million. The estimated cost for cleanup in North Andros is just under $300,000. In Central Andros, the estimated cost for Central Andros is almost $40,000. And once cleanup operations are completed at the end of the month, the total cost for the activities will be disclosed. Mr. Speaker, I may just elaborate on this cleanup, because one of the reasons why it's costing us so much money is persons who are moving the debris were actually creating their own dump sites on any vacant lot they saw. And so instead of taking the debris to the dump, they dumped them on vacant lots. In one case, they dumped them on Ross Davis Park, and we had to pay somebody to move from Ross Davis Park to take it to the right place. And then we found out, like last weekend in Carmichael, the park was already totally cleaned up, and people came and they dumped more debris on it. So we had to hire truckers to move it again. And so the challenge was finding sufficient dump sites. The challenge was making sure that when persons dumped the debris, that they separated the green debris from the bulk waste. And in many cases, they combined both, which meant that we had to hire people to separate them because the bulk waste went to the dump and the green waste was used to create mulch. And so we still have several sites where we have to continue to create mulch and to continue to separate the bulk waste from the green waste. And so again, it probably cost us money that it should not have cost us. But the whole exercise, I don't think the Bahamas ever saw the level of debris spread throughout the island, throughout the country, as it did after Hurricane Matthew. And so what we did to finalize the program is we actually scoped out all of the constituencies in Nassau and issued contracts. Instead of having people work by the day, which was done during the emergency process, we scoped out the work, hired individuals, and executed contracts for the completion of the debris removal. Repairs, yeah. I think St. Anne's is the only area where we had an issue with the contract that we executed, initially, and then the process now of reissuing a contract. No, St. Anne's, that's Montague. St. Anne's should be completed now.
Well, parliamentarians also gave member statements on majority rule that was celebrated on Tuesday, January 10th. Tourism Minister and MP for West Grand Bahama and Bimini, O.B. Wilshcombe, read into the record congratulatory remarks from various leaders in the region and spoke to the pivotal moment in Bahamian history and the importance of the labor movement during this time.
Reality is reality. What happened in the Bahamas 50 years ago, after a struggle of almost 12 years, and some say even more, we achieved majority rule. Majority rule, Mr. Speaker, has made a difference in our Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, I truly wish to have more time to speak on this because I believe that it is a subject that requires all Bahamians to truly comprehend that the Bahamas was not made after a general election, but it was made because of the efforts made by men and women, many who had nothing, many who were considered poor, many who were considered underprivileged, many who were not a part of the oligarchy, men and women, Mr. Speaker, who gave all that they had to achieve for what we have today. Mr. Speaker, there will be those who will argue that the fight began in 1942 when we had the Burma Road riot, and that might be true, Mr. Speaker, because what happened, in fact, was there was an uprising of those who were part of a labor movement, and those who stood strongly for equity, who thought that they should be paid equally to those who were building at the time the airport, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, I would say that until such time as there was a political party established in our country, and the first being the Progressive Liberal Party, we did not have the fight as it was, Mr. Speaker, proceeding over the following years. Mr. Speaker, allow me to read from a 1958 document, which was the Progressive Liberal Party Annual Magazine. And I'd like to read from a statement written by H.M. Taylor, because he puts it in perspective, Mr. Speaker. In fact, you'd find in this document they referred to the average Bahamian at the time as being very poor. In fact, they referred to them as a proletariat, because, Mr. Speaker, they thought that that is the category in which they could be considered. And I think it's important for us to appreciate in this country that the Progressive Liberal Party was started by white Bahamians, not black Bahamians, white Bahamians. H.M. Taylor, Cyril Stevenson, and William Cartwright. In fact, in this document, they talk about how they went to a room and they discussed that it was time now for a political party. It was time now to organize what became the Progressive Liberal Party. And H.M. Taylor said, Mr. Speaker, he said, on this, our third anniversary of the founding of this great movement, the people of the Bahamas find themselves moving along in a spirit and presence of liberalism. And there will be nothing under the sun to deter us from attaining our ultimate goal. Nothing will stop us until the bells of freedom shall ring from every nook and cranny, and the specter of political, economic, and social slavery, together with the segregation of the races, be forever wiped off the faces of all these fair isles. Mr. Speaker, it captures what they intended to do, what these white Bahamians intended to do, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, Cyril St. John Stevenson said it this way, in the same document, Mr. Speaker. He said, for the first time in the history of this ancient colony, a program has been developed to build a country to which every citizen can obtain higher standards of living with the promise of greater social and political freedom. Mr. Speaker, that's how it all began. Because you would see, Mr. Speaker, that what happened was from the Progressive Liberal Party, there was an election in 1956 that saw the emergence of who would become known as the father of the nation, Sir Lyndon Pinley. And that group of individuals who were elected became the guiding light, Mr. Speaker, of this movement. Because subsequent to the election of 1956, July 9th, 1956 was the day they entered this parliament, including the great Sir Milo Butler. He came into this parliament, Mr. Speaker, and began a process, even though the parliament was not allowed to meet and took a break for almost 6 months. And then, Mr. Speaker, a delegation led by Sir Milo Butler, Lyndon Pinley, and H.M. Taylor went to London. And at that discussion, Mr. Speaker, they pointed out, and these are documents, Mr. Speaker, that were released several years ago, finally released by the United Kingdom, Mr. Speaker, that says confidential, but they speak, Mr. Speaker, about what took place in the meetings and what was being discussed by those individuals. And the issues, Mr. Speaker, one, the plural vote, the fact that if you own land, you could vote, lack of universal adult suffrage, Mr. Speaker, the votes, no votes for women. The company vote was a major issue, Mr. Speaker. Labor was a major issue, Mr. Speaker, and education was a major issue, Mr. Speaker. Those were discussed with the Colonial Secretary. Those were discussed with the individuals. That became the framework of what we later would seek to achieve, and what they all achieved, Mr. Speaker. Because if you spoke to Sir Lyndon Pinley, he would inform you that there were several important events that took place on the journey to 1967. And that was one of them, Mr. Speaker, when they went to the UK. And of course, following that, Mr. Speaker, there was a general strike. The general strike that saw labor take a position because the Bay Street Boys at the time decided that they wanted to have tour cars, a tour company, Mr. Speaker, and that would be rivaling the taxi cab drivers. And labor stood up. Labor stood up 19 days, Mr. Speaker, town was shut down because of it taking a very strong position. And I think, Mr. Speaker, that's why we must appreciate in our country that the labor movement has relevance. We tend to see the labor movement as just a body of individuals making noise. That's not true, Mr. Speaker. The labor movement played a very important role in our democracy and causing the Bahamas to get to 1967, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to talk more about labor. I wish to talk about the women's movement. I wish to talk about all the issues relevant to this, Mr. Speaker. But of course, time does not allow for us to do so today. But I really believe, sir, that there must be a time when we begin to look at the history and put it in context. Why are we here? Because so many of our people don't know. So many people don't even know why, say, I'm a PLP, but I'm a PLP because of its philosophy, because of what it believes in, what it fought for, what it caused to happen in our country. That is why, Mr. Speaker, there's relevance to the story, to the history, and we must tell it, Mr. Speaker. We must not be shamed. George Mackey used to tell us all, if we're not careful, one day we're going to be apologizing for slavery if we do not understand and appreciate where we've come from, Mr. Speaker. And so on this day, Mr. Speaker, and limited to what I can say, Mr. Speaker, happy anniversary.
Well, opposition leader and Long Island MP Loretta Butler Turner also speaking to the occasion, noting that the move to majority rule did not only include blacks.
To take lead from some of the communications that have been laid on the table, one from the Prime Minister of Dominica and the other one from the leader of the Bermuda Labour Party, which seems to speak to something that I think we all should take note of. Obviously, their description of what we should be observing or will be observing tomorrow, Majority Rule Day, speaks to some questions that I think we all might examine scholastically as we look at how we frame majority rule. Obviously, in 1967, January 10th, was a very significant day. It was, in fact, not quite that day, but the day that the Bahamians went to general elections, and we saw a shift from the Bay Street Boys to a black-dominated party that became leader some 4 days later when we had a movement of independents who were able to give that majority to, in fact, the PLP. And so, Mr. Speaker, from that position, I asked the question because it certainly was in 1962, November, when I remembered we actually got the universal adult suffrage vote. When every Bahamian, not the company vote, not the landowner vote, not the plural vote, when every eligible Bahamian, male and female, were able to participate in what we would call the democratic process. One man, one woman, one vote. Subsequent to that, there was an election in 1962. And just from a scholastic point of view, I think that we need to have this discussion. If we in fact had universal enfranchisement in 62, and the result was not that it was a black-dominated government that won, but still the minority oligarchy, the will of the majority, in essence, was carried out. But when we look at the color makeup of our population, roughly 85%, 15%, 85% black, 15% white, that ushered in January 1967, when the Pindling-led grouping, along with my grandfather, along with the labor movement, along with other black Bahamians, became the government. I think that, for our students of history, is something that we might want to look, pardon me? I think that is something that we should not fail to look at holistically, because while we have moved the structure of the white oligarchy that actually ruled prior to 67, in essence, we did have universal adult participation in the electoral process prior to 67. And so what I think is, when we look at the definition of democracy, when we look at the definition of the Westminster system, whereby the majority wins or the majority rules. That is certainly a little confusing. And I use this example, Mr. Speaker. On December 7th, 2016, the majority of opposition persons in here took the constitutional right to determine who would be the leader of the official opposition. Majority, in this instance, rule. And so I draw that analogy, but not to diminish the fact that we did in fact in 1967 usher in a black-led government. That is not to be diminished at all. Because, of course, I share in that, given the fact that my lineage, my ancestry, was a great part of that. I also am happy to say that persons such as A.F. Adderley, Sir Milo Butler, and other black men of their day actually predated 1956, when they actually had political organizations. And they actually did hold office in this honorable house in a minority position. 1936, Sir Milo Butler was elected to this honorable house. And of course, what you will find, Mr. Speaker, is that that was well in advance of the 1956 formation of the PLP, the formal PLP party. Pardon me? 1953, formation of the PLP party. So we did have black men of land ownership who actually had contested to ensure that there was some representation of persons of color. And so I'm very, very proud to be able to stand here as the granddaughter of Sir Milo Bowton Butler. I'm also very proud of the fact that Sir Milo not only was one of the persons that felt that there should be empowerment for the masses, or the majority of people that look like we do, he was also very instrumental in ensuring that power was given to the people. The day that he threw the hourglass out the window, and when Lyndon Pinling threw the mace out the window to the people downstairs to ensure that the masses got the power. I'm also proud that a man like Sir Milo Butler, being a man who independently was able to pull himself up by the fortitude instilled in him in his late mother, Frances Butler, to have a way that he owned businesses, yes, on Bay Street, maybe not downtown Bay Street, but certainly on Bay Street, and was able to go into the Royal Bank of Canada in the 1960s to demand that people of color could actually work in the banks, where up to that point, heretofore, they did not have that position. And so as we tell and retell the story of the Bahamas, I think it is important to us to not diminish the fact of what persons like Clarence Bain, Lyndon Pinling, Milo Butler, Alvin Brennan, and all of them, different colors, different hues, were able to do in coming together to bring us to this point. Obviously, Mr. Speaker, for us to say that there were not greater opportunities for the black masses after 1967 would certainly be an untruth, because that certainly is what happened. More and more black people had an opportunity to be empowered, to be educated, to reach their full potential.
A Killarney MP and Free National Movement leader Dr. Hubert Minnis also contributed to the Majority Rule conversation and gave recommendations for the next 50 years.
But as we celebrate this historical event, we pay tribute to and we honor all those who sacrificed and struggled for freedom, equality, and democracy in our Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, this includes those well-known and those whose names may never be famous. But we remember those who are still with us today, like the Honorable A.D. Hanna, Sir Arthur Folks, Mr. Maurice Moore, and Dr. Elwood Donaldson. Mr. Speaker, they are all Bahamian patriots who have given so much to the country that they love. And in fact, sitting here on the government side is the offspring of Arthur Hanna, member for Angliston, Glennis Hanna Martin, and Sir Arthur Folks made his contribution also, Mr. Speaker, as we've had in this Parliament his son, Dion Hanna, who was a former government minister, Dion Folks, who was a former government minister, and was also a former deputy leader of the Free National Movement. And Maurice Moore continues to speak today, Mr. Speaker, in defense of the Free National Movement. As leader of one of the major political parties in the Bahamas, the Free National Movement, I thank those who dedicated their hearts and souls to the great struggle for freedom and equality which we all so celebrate. I wish to remind us that majority rule is not an accomplishment of any one political party or any one group of people. It crosses the boundaries of party and classes, race and gender, and any other circumstance of birth. I'm also pleased, Mr. Speaker, to say that all of the 8 founders of the Free National Movement were among those who were elected on that historical day in 1967. It is also a matter of history that a majority of those elected eventually joined the Free National Movement. I say this not to boast, but to make clear that majority rule is not about any single political party. Majority rule was about the people. Majority rule, Mr. Speaker, is an accomplishment for us as a people committed to the principles of equality and freedom. It made us all a better people, black and white, rich and poor, male and female. It helped to make us one people, united in love and service. And allow me, Mr. Speaker, just for a little bit to express my personal thoughts and feelings about majority rule. When I was a young boy, I sold Bahamian Times. And this newspaper was edited by none other than Sir Arthur Folks, who played a significant role in the struggle. And one of my uncles, Dudley Gilbert, helped to produce that paper, Mr. Speaker. A group of us youngsters would go all over Nassau, New Providence, selling that paper. Myself, Dion Folks, Brendan Folks, and my brother, Cyril Boxer Minnis. 2 of those 4 young boys went on to become politicians. Dion Folks, who was a former leader of the Free National Movement, and I, deputy leader, and I, Mr. Speaker, another paper boy, who sold not only Bahamian Times, but the Nassau Guardian and the Tribune, now stand here as leader of the Free National Movement. We were happy when we made some change to put in our pockets. When you don't have much money, Mr. Speaker, every little bit counts. But more importantly, we had a sense that we were playing our part, no matter how little it may have seemed. to impact the change. We knew that we were doing something very important. We were helping to get the message out. And I believe, Mr. Speaker, there's a lesson here. No matter how insignificant you may think it is, we all have our part to play in making great things happen. Those young women and men who fried and sold fritters, they played an important role. Men like my father, who allowed the then Progressive Liberal Party to utilize his property on Market Street for rallies, he played a significant role. We should always remember, Mr. Speaker, these words from Dr. Martin Luther King, and I quote, "Everybody can be great because anybody can serve." You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and verb agree to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love.
Well, we now take you to a live shot of the House of Assembly. As you can see, it's a full house in Parliament today as we await the start of proceedings of the House of Assembly. All House members seem to be present today, Julian.
Yeah, they do seem to be there in good numbers. So far, we can see on both the governing and the oppositions, the two oppositions, I guess, the official opposition and the Free National Movement side, both of them there.
So it's anticipated that we will get started soon. We see House members making some final preparations. We just spoke with House Speaker Dr. Kendall Major, who informed us that they will be starting soon. But we'll take you back to our recap of Parliament from last week. The Marco City MP Greg Moss spoke to the historical significance of Majority Rule Day.
In the face of an overpowering minority. That is the history that we came from. And I think it does us well to remember that, to remind our people of that, to teach us that to our children, and not to allow the majority rule to degenerate into partisan political views or racial divides. When we look at the privileged few, some may call them the business oligarchy, the disadvantaged majority, some may just be very simplistic and call them the workers, we see where the divide lay in the past. And the question, therefore, becomes, in my mind, Mr. Speaker, of what was the promise of majority rule, and whether we have achieved that promise, and what remains to be celebrated, and what remains to be built upon as we go forward as a country, as a people, together. I think it's not inaccurate to summarize the promise of majority rule as being the promise of equity, the promise of inclusion, and the promise of the participation by the majority in the wealth of their country. You see, we build this country, Mr. Speaker, I always say in this House, on 4 pillars, 4 fundamental pillars. We build this country on this idea that our people, the majority of our people, have a right to survive. That is the pillar of health. Before 1967, and certainly before 1973, and well into the 70s, the majority of the people in this country did not have access to health and to health care. And the health care of this country was built as a necessary appendage to the promise of majority rule. We build this country on another foundation, Mr. Speaker, the promise of education. Again, the majority of our people were not educated. And the public school system was created by a majority rule government.
Well, the House of Assembly is now in session. We do take you now to live proceedings of the House. Golden Gates MP Shane Gibson is expected to continue his contribution on the recovery efforts post-Hurricane Matthew and Hurricane Joaquin. You can continue to watch live proceedings of the House of Assembly right here on Parliamentary Channel 240. Join us again at the 1 o'clock hour if the House breaks at that time for live interviews. I'm Janae Noel Ferguson.
And I'm Julian Reed.
We're on heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Fred goes first then.
Good morning, honorable members. Today is Wednesday, the 18th day of January of our Lord, in the year of our Lord 2017. Welcome back to the continuation of the sitting of this honorable house. When we suspended last sitting, we were on statements and communication by ministers. Just before we commence with the proceedings, by way of apology, the member for Central Grand Bahama extends his apologies for his absence today, and he sends his regards. Member for Central Grand Bahama, apology for his absence today. To the business at hand, statements and communication by ministers. Further statements. Chair recognizes the honourable member for Fox Hill. Statements and communications.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to address the House on immigration matters that are now in the public domain. I want to lay on the table the statistics for repatriations, arrests, and releases for the years 2015 and 2016. They are broken down by nationality. The general categories are: in 2015, 4,957 people were arrested, 3,379 were repatriated, 571 were released. It's important to note that amongst those who were released are many who owed work permit fees. I'd like you to compare and contrast the figures from 2015 to those of 2016. In 2016, 7,357 people were arrested, 6,869 were repatriated, and 488 people were released. The major categories were Cubans and Haitians. I give these figures for comparison year to year. 2015 as compared to 2016. So in 2016, 1,287 Cubans were repatriated compared to 153 in 2015. In 2015, 3,183 Haitians were repatriated, and in 2016, 5,241. You will see that there is a substantial jump in the figures, particularly in Cubans, and we believe that this was largely driven by Cubans anticipating the end of the so-called wet foot, dry foot policy. I wish to record the statement released by the government on the announcement by the United States government of an end to that policy, which gave Cubans who landed in the United States a fast track to permanent residence. The officials here have said, that is, our public officials have said, that there have not been any interdictions of Cubans since the U.S. policy was announced. We continue to watch the situation, however. And the statement, which was issued on the 12th of January from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, said the following. The United States government, through a charge in the Bahamas, Lisa Johnson, communicated to the foreign minister this afternoon that with immediate effect, the so-called wet foot, dry foot immigration policy of the United States with regard to Cuban nationals landing in the United States will come to an end. The United States told the foreign minister that the decision comes following the renewal of diplomatic relations between the two countries, the United States and Cuba. The effect of the policy is that Cuban nationals will now be treated like any other foreign nationals landing in the United States illegally. They will be returned following the appropriate screening to determine whether they qualify for refugee status. The Bahamas government welcomes this decision, particularly as it is believed that this policy was believed to be driving the rise in Cuban landings in the Bahamas. The Bahamas repatriated 187 Cuban nationals in 2014. With the U.S. rapprochement of Cuba at the end of 2014, the Bahamas repatriated 196 Cubans in 2015, and numbers continually spiked from June 2016, ending the year with 917 repatriations. Up to the 12th of January 2017, 114 Cubans have been repatriated. The government is mindful, however, that the decision is taken just as the political administration in the United States is about to change. The government waits to see whether the policy will continue beyond the current administration before the government can determine the policy's full effects. I wish also to address various records that have been circulating by email and social media about the actions of the Immigration Department in Grand Bahama. In a meeting on the 15th of January of the Coral Beach Condominium Association, Fred Smith, QC, said the following inter alia, and I quote, "It is inappropriate for the government to get involved in the private financial or private disputes in a condominium association like this. Why is Fred Mitchell, the Minister of Bahamas Immigration, getting involved in a dispute that exists between condominium owners? Why is he picking on Bruno Raffo or Sandra or Nancy or others? Make no mistake, when the new board decides to enforce a lien against some Bahamian who refuses to pay the maintenance, you will be the next one that immigration is going to try to deport. And that's why I understand they are winning. Those who are seeking to undermine the effectiveness that the board of directors has been able to achieve over these years are now winning, because they now think, and they do, because they got a new board, and the new board may be a little naive, and this is not a criticism, a little naive or a little innocent, and just doesn't know the way of these people. It is a very difficult environment to live in. Most of you, you're all white for the most part, and it's a big problem for the black Bahamians that you're down here. Believe it or not, they want your money, they want you to spend it, but they don't like you, all right? A lot of them don't. The fact is, the Bahamas is a very racist, a very xenophobic, a nationally insecure, and a very hateful place to foreigners. So you just can't bury your head in the sand. The record states, sir, that there were 65 people at that meeting. Most of them were non-nationals, it appears. As this matter is now circulating in the public domain, largely through social media, I believe it must be addressed. First, Mr. Smith is incorrect and disingenuous when he says that Fred Mitchell, this minister, is picking on anyone. That is a falsehood. Secondly, the record shows that Bruno Rufo, about whom he speaks, is a Canadian citizen now before the criminal courts of the Bahamas on a charge of working in the Bahamas without a work permit. That is an offense in Bahamian law. Prior to becoming minister, Mr. Rufo was removed from the Bahamas under procedures that appear to have been accepted then, but was challenged when that procedure was used by the department when I became minister. There are several complaints on file about his conduct. Secondly, sir, for the purposes of the condominium association owners and all foreign national residents and permanent residents, the Bahamas government makes decisions on permanent residents on a quasi-judicial basis. There is the rule of law in the Bahamas, and no one's rights are infringed upon. When someone violates the laws and procedures of the Bahamas, then the Department of Immigration acts. Such an individual against whom a decision is made has a right in law to review their case, and the government acts according to law. The Bahamas government is not involved in any way in any dispute with the Coral Beach Condominium Association. A complete record will show that this is the case with Bruno Rufo. Mr. Rufo has availed himself of the courts of the Bahamas, and the records show that Mr. Smith has been paid for his work handsomely, with the minutes of the meeting's record showing that some $270,000 in fees have been collected by him and his firm for work done for the association, and some $1 million in outstanding fees are unbilled. This is the point I've made as a Minister of Immigration to the Bahamian public. It is obvious that this is a valuable country that we have, when people are willing to spend that kind of money to stay here, even in the face of alleged infringements of the law. There are several cases which are still before the courts involving the subject person. We, sir, have followed the law at all times. But it is the last more general remark about which the international public must be disabused. Mr. Smith, QC, who is himself a naturalized citizen of the Bahamas and was given shelter in this country, has indicated the following, and I quote, "The fact is the Bahamas is a very racist, a very xenophobic, a nationally insecure, and a very hateful place to foreigners," end of quote. This is absolutely untrue. This is a statement that comes from someone who represents himself as a human rights activist. He makes his living and a livelihood in the Bahamas. This is the equivalent of a fisherman calling his own fish stink. Given the wide circulation of the documents, no immigration minister can allow this comment to stand unchallenged, particularly as it was delivered in the face of 65 foreign individuals who live in the Bahamas and are valued investors here. It is hateful, it is deceitful, this is ungrateful, it is dishonest, it is unpatriotic. All fun and jokes aside, Mr. Speaker, as a public policy maker, as a member of Parliament, as a minister of the government, I am sworn to defend the Bahamas and its constitution and its people without fear or favor. I do not appreciate in the least this attempt to smear me and to smear the government and the wider Bahamian people, no matter how it is dressed up. We are a blessed people, a stable democracy. Our first obligation is to the Bahamas. I've had occasion before to point out what Section 18 of the Immigration Act empowers the minister to do when someone who is in the Bahamas acts incompatibly with the status that's been bestowed upon them. I've exercised that right once already and will not hesitate to do so where the law allows and circumstances warrant. Mr. Smith should be given an opportunity to resile from this vile, hateful, derogatory, and defamatory language. If not, then the professional body of which he is a part ought to examine carefully the record of his statements with regard to this matter and see whether this is appropriate conduct for one such as this. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Order that the communication be brought up. Order that the communication do lie on the table. Further statements and communication by ministers. Shall I recognize the honourable member for Angliston?
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I rise to communicate to this honorable House on recent events emerging from negotiations between the Bahamas government and the United States of America as it relates to the Bahamas' airspace. This communication, Mr. Speaker, is consequent upon a recent press conference held by the Prime Minister on this matter. Mr. Speaker, I advise the following. 1. In 1952, when the Bahamas was yet a colony, the United Kingdom and the United States of America entered into an agreement which provided for the United States of America to manage and control the airspace of the Bahamas as it relates to aircraft transiting that airspace. 2. Over the years, the Bahamas has developed its own air traffic management capacity as it relates to flights up to 12,000 feet in the Nassau-controlled area and up to 6,000 feet above the remainder of the Bahamas, while the FAA has managed air traffic at the upper levels. 3. The United States of America collects revenue payable by all commercial aircraft transiting that airspace, including our own domestic aircraft taking off and landing within the Bahamas. 4th, in or about 2004, the then Christie administration made application to the International Civil Aviation Organization for the Bahamas to manage and control its own airspace, 2004. Recognizing at that time that we did not have the capacity to manage the airspace ourselves, a request for proposal was prepared to invite proposals from competent air navigation service entities to enter into an arrangement with the Bahamas government for the management and control of our airspace on behalf of the Bahamas. That's in 2004. Fifthly, during that period, and on a parallel basis, the Bahamas was engaged in discussions with the United States of America through the FAA as one of those possible air navigation service entities and with neighboring states as related to the borders of our airspace. 6. The Christie administration lost office in 2007. 7. The succeeding Ingram administration had a shift in policy, declaring that the Bahamas would never be able to fully control its own airspace, thereby bringing to an end all of those efforts, applications, and negotiations that were then underway. 8. The Christie administration, on taking office in 2012, again recommenced the negotiations with the United States, which began in earnest in 2014. 9. There have been several meetings held either in Nassau or the United States, including a meeting between myself and the U.S. Secretary of Transportation, Anthony Fox, in Washington, D.C. 10. In our discussions with the FAA since 2014, the Bahamas sought the following things. In other words, this is what we had on the table. 1, a 10-year agreement for the FAA to manage our airspace with a fair revenue-sharing arrangement. 2, that Bahamian aircraft be exempt from the payment of overflight fees for travel within the Bahamas airspace. 3, technical assistance and training. 4, that the U.S. support the Bahamas in its application to ICAO to expand its flight information region laterally to encompass the entire geographical territory of the Bahamas and unlimited vertically. Currently, the Nassau FIR covers only a small portion of the Bahamas. That is what we had on the table in those negotiations. Throughout these negotiations, the Bahamas has been aware that it does not currently possess the complex infrastructural or technical capacity to
to manage its own airspace, as it did not in 2004, at the upper levels, as was our recognition at that time. When it was determined in 2004 that we would have to outsource the management of the airspace, it has been estimated that a period of 10 years will be sufficient to permit the Bahamas to make the necessary significant capital injection and engage and train the necessary personnel to take full management of the airspace. So when we went to negotiations, Speaker, we understood that we were not able to take over the airspace. We do not have the capacity at this time, Speaker. But pursuant to a 1952 agreement, we've never regularized the situation with the American government. And they have been collecting overflight fees and managing and control the airspace, and Bahamian aircraft paying overflight fees. Then U.S. aircraft are exempt as it relates to aircraft that takes off and lands in America. So we went to the table. At the last meeting in Miami, Florida on December 16, 2016, it was agreed that Bahamian aircraft will be exempted from the payment of overflight fees for flights that take off and land at Bahamian airports without exiting the Bahamas airspace. The legal process to implement the exemption in the United States has already been initiated within their bureaucracy and is expected to be completed shortly. Bahamian aircraft will be exempt for the first time since 1952. Once that is completed, the exemption is expected to go into effect. In this regard, the Department of Civil Aviation, or the Bahamas Civil Aviation Authority, has provided the FAA with a listing of all airports in the Bahamas and registered Bahamian aircraft with valid air operator's certificate. This will result in significant savings to all domestic carriers, including Bahamas Air. And I think the Prime Minister would have noted that in the case of Bahamas Air, in the last 3 years, public funds in the amount of $1 million have been paid in overflight fees in its aircraft that took off and landed within the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And there were others. I've heard other carriers speak to the benefit that comes from it. Speaker, the FAA has also agreed to support the Bahamas' application to have its FIR expanded. That was the second plank in what we went to the table with. The first was exemption. The second was to have the FIR expanded to include the entire geography of the Bahamas. Negotiations are going to continue with the FAA in February to conclude an agreement, and this is the third and probably the most significant one, to conclude an agreement on the management of the airspace with the Bahamas setting the overflight fee rates in our upper air, and the Bahamas collecting same, which is consistent with ICAO policy. And because we do not have the capacity, which is a reality, paying to the FAA an agreed fee for their services. So we will collect the overflight fees and contract with the FAA to conduct the services until we are able to do it for ourselves. Speaker, I want to say that during this 10-year period, the Bahamas Civil Aviation Authority has committed to building capacity so that we are able to manage our own airspace. Yes, forthwith. Speaker, it is expected that I will be in a position within a matter of weeks to speak further to the major plank, which is the agreement between the Americans and the Bahamas on the management of the airspace. Speaker, the Bahamas has already formally applied to ICAO to expand our flight information region to correlate with our maritime boundaries. That is not the case at this time. And discussions with ICAO have been planned and are expected to begin as early as next week. Pursuant to this, discussions are being planned with the border states, or recommenced, because we were here before in 2004, with the border states of Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Cuba, and the United Kingdom, representing the Turks and Caicos Islands, to agree the lines of demarcation between them and the Bahamas. So this is significant, Speaker. We've looked at us doing our maritime boundaries. We are now doing our airspace boundaries. So this is a very, very, very significant territorial undertaking that is happening in the life of the Bahamas. In summary, Mr. Speaker, at the end of this process, It is expected that the Bahamas will have an expanded FIR to correspond with its maritime borders. Bahamian aircraft, well, not at the end, that's coming now. Bahamian aircraft will be exempt from overflight fees. The Bahamas will collect overflight fees for all other aircraft transiting the airspace and will contract with the FAA for a period of 10 years to provide the necessary air traffic management services, as the Bahamas does not currently have the complex technical or infrastructural capacity to do same. And it is estimated that it will take approximately 10 years to develop same. This agreement will replace the agreement of 1952 and will be executed between two sovereign states. I wish to add, Mr. Speaker, that the Bahamas' aviation sector is, as I speak, in the midst of great reform, modernization, and transformation, inclusive of our air navigation services, and even now we are poised to engage yet another cadre of air traffic controllers. I think there are another 10 that we're taking on. Speaker, I wish to acknowledge and thank our team, comprising, and these who negotiated with the FAA on our behalf, Charles Albury, Acting Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Tourism, but formerly Undersecretary in the Ministry of Transport and Aviation, Subaltern Bethel, Senior Policy Advisor in the Office of the Prime Minister, Keith Major, Acting Director of the Bahamas Civil Aviation Authority, Patrick Roll, former Director of Civil Aviation Department and Consultant of the Ministry of Transport and Aviation, Roscoe Popol, Senior Air Traffic Controller and former President of the Bahamas Air Traffic Controllers Union, Carol Albury, Director of Bahamas National Geographic Information System, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and its varying personalities in the Bahamas and in Florida and in Washington, Deepak Patnagar of Bahamas Power and Light, and for a short period there was Rowena Bethel, then Director of the National Insurance Board, Speaker. The Speaker, this is an historical moment in the lives of our people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
If I can just add, I had an annex here. This is a print of the overflight fees that are currently charged by the FAA. And in October 2014, the FAA were charging $56.86 per 100 nautical miles. And then in January 1st, it went to $58.45. And January 1st of this year. So there's been an increase this year in the overflight fees payable. And this is a guide that we are looking at now because this is what the FAA is currently charging. But it gives you an idea of how the value is assessed. And I should have included, Mr. Speaker, that the FAA have shared information with us on the overflight traffic, et cetera, in certain key times. And so it's assisting us in being in a strategic and informed position as to how the fee should be set and what kind of arrangement we should fee in terms of the Americans managing the airspace, Mr. Speaker. So that's it.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Order that the communications be brought up.
Very good. Well done.
I'll get a page from this.
You may never get the credit.
No, I know that. I don't see how it is.
All right.
How this guy then was behaving over there.
Thank you. Order that the communication to lie on the table. Further statements and communication by ministers?
So this is just a technical, but I neglected to lay this.
Member for Fox Hill, yes?
Yeah, the disaggregated statistics I neglected to.
Very well. Order that the documents be brought up. And order that the documents do lie on the table. Thank you. Member for Kalani, you rise.
Find out whether the member would table what type of fees or revenue the FAA would have collected during that period. And my understanding is that we would collect and then pay FAA, and if that's the case, would we get any reimbursement, or we only would receive free services for our airlines?
Thank you, Honourable Member. Member for Anderson.
The member for Kalani, I know he got a lot on his mind. I just went through all of that, but I will repeat it. the arrangement is that we will collect our own overflight fees. It will be in accordance with ICAO standards. I've tabled what the FAA currently charges. I've also indicated that they've shared with us the traffic during peak periods so that we have an understanding of what the airspace yields during peak times. That's the first thing. Secondly, I've also indicated that the Bahamas does not have the capacity. It is what it is. Okay, you're talking about the upper airspace. We don't have the capacity. The FAA certainly does. In 2004, we considered a number of companies, including the FAA, to manage the airspace. It was always a delegation of management because we don't have the capacity. A determination has been made as a matter of policy that we would continue with the FAA in the management of the airspace. And so we've abandoned an RFP and we've gone with the FAA to manage the airspace. It will be done under the circumstances where the government of the Bahamas collects the overflight fee and will contract with the FAA for their management services of the airspace. And so I hope that answers that. You were asking if they were reimbursed. There's no reimbursement. We are collecting. We will be collecting the fees. So there's no reimbursement. We collect. And we will negotiate a management fee and will disperse in accordance with that. But in the meantime, Kalani, we have committed as a people that we will build capacity in air traffic and navigation services. We're going to do that, and we're getting there. We've made significant investment already with $11 million radar right now at the airport and the APP building and simulators. A lot of money has already been invested. But what will be required for the upper air is quite significant and a totally different ball game. And so we have to now build capacity. It takes quite a while for one air traffic controller to be fully trained because they're the full system. They go all the way up to radar approach. I think it's information radar and approach and radar. So it's 3 phases, and we do the full length. Now in America, I think they go directly to certain areas, full approach, or directly to radar. But in the Bahamas, our controllers go the entire range of training, so they have knowledge of everything. It takes a while, and we will be looking at the training process to see whether it could be reviewed in terms of timelines. But my advice is, from the technical people, not me, is that 10 years is a not conservative way of describing how long it would take. So I hope I answered that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Member.
Search and rescue. Yeah.
Further statements and communication by ministers.
By the member for Supervision Speaker. The other thing is search and rescue and all of that, etc. And we're currently entering, hopefully, into a memorandum of understanding with the Coast Guard on search and rescue. But we have tremendous territorial waters, and so it's a really significant undertaking. But I think that certainly, I'm hoping that all will agree that where we are today is as the Prime Minister described, a landmark moment in our history. Speaker, when last week, I laid the 2016 annual reports and accounts of the Bahamas Maritime Authority. And in my exuberance, I said that it was the first time ever that they had garnered a profit. That was not correct. What I really want to say was to describe a combination of things that have been happening in the BMA, which are really positioning the BMA in a really strong place, Mr. Speaker. And so I just want to put this in context, because I think I was rushing it, but I want to do this because I think it's important for the Bahamian people to know what is happening with the Bahamas Maritime Authority in the interest of the Bahamian people. And, Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas fleet at the 30th of June, 2016 comprised 1,598 vessels, 63.68 million gross tons. And if I compare that to last year it was 131 vessels of 6.6 million gross tons. So this year, we have a net gain of 4.505 million gross tons. And Mr. Speaker, the BMA is expanding. We now have, and this has happened, some have happened during our watch and some has happened before, etc. It's been a continuing story. The BMA has offices in London, Nassau, Hong Kong, Greece, New York, and we're now getting ready to look at Tokyo and we have identified premises in Miami. So it now is, you will see the BMA, hopefully in the short order: Hong Kong, Greece, London, New York, Nassau, Miami, Tokyo. Speaker, the world position of the BMA is currently in the top 10 ship registries. It's number 1 amongst cruise ships in the world. It holds over 5% of the world's shipping tonnage on its registry. Over 5% of the world's shipping tonnage on the Bahamas registry. The BMA's income increased by 6.26% in this financial year to the total of 17.433 million, and that compares to 2015, where it was 16,405 million. So it has gained more than $1 million in profits this year, while at the same time expanding its offices, because we opened Greece, we're going into Miami. It's profit earning and expanding. The BMA's contributions to the cadet program, which I feel very pleased that it was commenced under the Christie administration, and it's proven to be a pivotal trigger for maritime studies and positioning the Bahamas as a maritime state in this country. But the BMA contributes to the cadet program and to a scholarship program, and the amount this year, or that particular fiscal year, amounted to $496,080. So that they've put money back in maritime training of young people. The BMA's contribution to the consolidated fund for the financial year was $4,239,584 went to the public treasury. Additionally, the Bahamas Maritime Authority has assisted the Port Department with developing a suite of legislation to enhance the maritime safety standards in our country. And you would have seen, Mr. Speaker, that we have laid bills on the floor of the House, table of the House, and those bills will be debated. But those bills were the result of the collaboration of the Port Department and the Bahamas Maritime Authority. The BMA's IMO subscription was $838,450,000, making us the 6th largest contributor to IMO. And we were recently elected at the 29th IMO Assembly to sit on the council. The global benchmark by which flag stakes are measured is the performance of its fleet in terms of port state control detention statistics. For the year 1st January to 31st December 2015, the Bahamas had 42 port state control detentions. There were 15 detentions in the 6 months to 3rd of June 2016, which is boding well for the flag that we are probably going to experience, if we keep this pace, the lowest number of detentions in its history. The Bahamas has once again retained its position on the Port State Control White List, the highest maritime grading. And as I've indicated, we were successful in our re-election at the 29th IMO Assembly, which was held in London, November of 2015. And we attracted 124 votes from the 154 votes. It was a big win, Speaker. And Speaker, there have been a number of conventions that have been entered into, and agreements and contracts. And the Bahamas, through the Bahamas Maritime Authority, has had its cooperating non-contracting party status with the Northeast Atlantic Fisheries Commission renewed in 2016. And so, Mr. Speaker, just in closing, the Bahamas Maritime Authority was commenced in 1995. And at that time, there was an investment of $1 million. And to date, the BMA has remitted $82.6 million to the government of the Bahamas. Speaker, it's doing well. Thank you very much, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Order that the documents be brought up. Communication. Order that the communication do lie on the table. Further statements and communication by ministers. Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Golden Gates.
Last week I started my communication, and I'm going to try not to be repetitive, and but I'm going to highlight some areas that changed since last week. And hopefully I won't repeat anything that I said last week. But suffice it to say that the repair and restoration program is moving ahead. In some instances, we have to actually go and visit some of these family islands because I was talking to the member from Andros a couple of minutes ago, and he had some concerns about Central Andros. And this time, unlike last time, when there was no VAT, no monthly certificates you had to get, you didn't have to be licensed. We could just go and hire a carpenter to do carpentry work or hire a mason. Now you can't hire somebody unless they have a business license and they're VAT compliant. And then you have to, I think they need that certificate every month. So the tax compliance certificate must be presented every single month, which is creating other delays as well. And so it's sort of slowing down the process compared to last time. Mr. Speaker, phase 2 of the hurricane walking, which I spoke about last week, construction program, be updating it from last week. It will comprise of 9 houses, 2 on Rumpke and 7 on Long Island. And the redesign of the houses is being completed, and the visit will take place shortly to Rumpke and Long Island to meet with the contractors. The Speaker, concerns are being raised regarding the condition of the health clinics in Long Island damaged by hurricane walking. I'm advised that following the passage of hurricane walking, the Roses Clinic sustained minor roof and other sundry damage. The clinic was repaired and is operational. A generator was donated by the Pan American Health Organization and was installed in November, and this is the first time that the clinic, I understand, has been provided with a generator. I'm advised that the Roses Clinic is in good shape and there are no major problems at this time. Mr. Speaker, I'm advised that the public health clinic in Clarencetown was totally destroyed by hurricane walking, and health officials are of the view that there's no need to repair, rebuild, reconstruct, or replace the said clinic. And that is because the Deadman's Key Clinic, I'm advised, is only 10 minutes away from the Clarencetown Clinic. So that is the decision that the Ministry of Health made. Mr. Speaker, the Deadman's Key Clinic is the main health center for Long Island, for South Long Island, and its roof was damaged by hurricane walking and repairs have been completed. However, it needs sealing work to be carried out. The clinic is presently operational. And following Hurricane Matthew, the clinic is in need of 6 external doors and an air conditioning unit. I'm also advised that there was some minor damage to the clinic in Sims, and estimates for these repairs are being obtained by the Ministry of Health. Mr. Speaker, I move on to the repair program. Hurricane Matthew.
The member yield. Chair recognize member for Long Island.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very grateful to the member for this report. However, I had questioned the Clarencetown Clinic, which is an integral part of the capital of Long Island, Clarencetown being its capital, also being an area where we have a population of youngsters who are constantly needing urgent health intervention, and a group of elderly people. Now, I don't know who's doing the driving or who's suggesting that the drive from Clarencetown to Deadman's Key Clinic or from that area is only 10 minutes, but I would caution that whoever is making these decisions, that they become more fully acquainted with the island, because we are talking more than 10 minutes between these settlements. It is sad because I know, for example, right next door to the Clarencetown Clinic, there are people who are asthmatic, that are constantly in need of nebulizers and other things like that. And we've had instances, Mr. Speaker, where young persons, one I know, for instance, who truly died because of the lack of intervention in a timely fashion, having had an asthmatic attack. And so, on these islands where communities are in fact remote, transportation is not always reliable. I'm not suggesting to the minister who's carrying out this work, but certainly to the Ministry of Health, that they re-look at that, to think that perhaps there should be some type of clinic in Clarencetown, which I suggest again is the capital of Long Island. And if in fact we cannot have such a clinic, I remember after Hurricane Joaquin doing some research, I suggested that maybe what might be useful in some of these family islands is perhaps something they refer to as mobile clinics that can move from one area to another. But certainly the intervention that is needed for these individuals that display asthmatic attacks, 10 minutes is a long time, but I suggest that that drive from Clarencetown to Deadman's Key by far exceeds 10 minutes. And we know that in a moment, we can lose lives. And so I'm very disappointed to understand that that clinic is not going to be revived. Roses as well, if we were to talk about the distance, is a long distance away. And essentially, if you went to Roses, you're going away from the area where the airport is located if in fact someone has to have an emergency airlift out of Long Island. So this is not good news for my constituents. And I would invite the Ministry of Health to strongly look at repurposing that, or definitely doing the, looking at that decision and repurposing a building in the area that can be used as a makeshift clinic for the residents of Clarencetown.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Member for Golden Gates, you may continue.
I appreciate the member's concern. And, that's one of the difficulties we have in trying to managing the Bahamas. Throughout the Bahamas, you have 98 clinics. 98 clinics. And it's always difficult when you have to tell individuals they have to drive 10, 15, 20 minutes to a clinic. And so I think, what will probably happen is the Ministry of Health will probably revisit it and look at it again and determine whether there's a need to rebuild or locate a new facility in order to put a clinic. But the decision that they made based on information they had available to them was that it wasn't necessary. But obviously, since the member raised that point, I'm sure the Ministry of Health will look at it again. The visit to Mr. Speaker to Great Albuquerque to once again assess what is happening there will take place on Thursday and Friday, the 19th and the 20th of this month, which is tomorrow and Friday, Mr. Speaker. The door-to-door assessments of private homes is virtually completed throughout the Bahamas. And when we look at the numbers, we had a total of around 8,000 homes that was assessed throughout the Bahamas. In New Providence, we had 4,000 homes. In Grand Bahama, we had around 3,000. In North and Central Andros, we had 462. In Great Albuquerque, Berry Islands, we had 107. In Nago, we had 120. Exuma, we had 97. Eleuthera, 65, bringing it to a total of just under 8,000. Mr. Speaker, the voucher program for materials for qualified homeowners to carry out repairs is progressing well, and to date, vouchers valued at just over $1.1 million have been approved for 797 persons. And the breakdown for the voucher for that 797 is New Providence 305, Grand Bahama 475, and North Andros 17. Mr. Speaker, the issuance of contracts for labor is well underway, and thus far, contracts valued at some $3.7 million have been issued for repairs to 298 houses as follows. New Providence, 131 contracts at a cost of some $705,910.47. Grand Bahama, 157 contracts at a cost of some $3,045,015.69. North Andros, 10 contracts at a cost of some $39,454 for a total of 298 contracts at a cost of some $3.7 million. Mr. Speaker, I wish to stress that this number represents signed contracts for repairs, which are either in progress or about to commence, and the process of negotiating and issuing contracts is ongoing. For instance, while the number of signed contracts for North Andros stands at just 10, we had 68 letters of intent that were issued so far to contractors for labor and materials for the repair of the houses. And as I said earlier, we issued a letters of intent initially so that the contractors could go and just verify and validate the amount that was given to us by the technical assessors. Mr. Speaker, in New Providence, 830 letters of intent have been issued to contractors as of January 12th. As of the 12th, 830 letters of intent were issued. And so you can see, even though we have 131 contracts executed, we issued 830 letters of intent, and as soon as they come back, then those contracts will be issued as well. Mr. Speaker, the status of the cleanup in North Andros as at January 13th was as follows. All Andros and Berry Islands Regatta Village completed. Morgan's Bluff and Pineville, 80% completed. Low Sound and Fire Trail, 60% completed. Nicholstown, 90% completed. Conch Sound, 90% completed. Mastic Point, North and South, 95% completed. And the Bar community, it is completed. Mr. Speaker, we had a number of persons who were displaced after the hurricane, and we are still providing accommodations for 106 persons. That's 40 here in New Providence, 27 in Grand Bahama, and 37 in North Andros. As for the repairs to government buildings, as I said last time, we've already issued contracts to 4 contractors totaling some $3.3 million for the Supreme Court, the Senate, the Churchill Building, and the Tracon Building. And of course, we were advised that the fire station at the airport is in the wrong location, and it has to be rebuilt on another location. So instead of repairing that fire station on the wrong location, plans are now being finalized to rebuild a new fire station at the airport at a new location that has already been identified. We are awaiting detailed scoping of public buildings in New Providence, which requires repairs. But so far, the following buildings have been assessed for the following amounts. Bahamas government buildings, that's Bahamas Customs. We have contract number 1, which is $48,550. A second one for Bahamas Customs, which is $49,896. Government House and Ballroom and the office building, some $32,300. Carmichael Road Library and Post Office, $23,800. The Jail Center, $19,434. The Dock Master Facility on Porter's Key Dock, $180,679. The Arthur's Building, $25,000. The Eastern Public Library, $37,800. The Nazareth Center, $10,614. Bonefish Pond Dock, some $17,690. Grandstown Post Office, $12,700. And the Shirley Street Post Office, some $5,200. The preliminary estimates of Hurricane Matthew damage on government buildings and infrastructure in New Providence as of the 11th of November 2016 are as follows. Government buildings, some $16,547. Docks and bridges, along with seawalls, $2.4 million. And roads, some $1.3 million. Bearing in mind that we have not completed all of the assessments of all of the government buildings, the docks, and all the facilities to date. That's only up to November 11, 2016. Preliminary estimates of Hurricane Matthew damage on government buildings and infrastructure in the Family Islands as of November 11, 2016 are as follows. Government buildings in Andros and Grand Bahama, some $7.2 million. Docks, bridges, and seawalls, some $8.1 million, and roads, some $4.9 million. And of course, the Ministry of Youth, Sports, and Culture sporting facility, some $270,000. Mr. Speaker, in Grand Bahama, repairs to the Hunters Post Office have been completed at a cost of just over $100,000. The contract was awarded in the amount of $70,562 for repairs to the administrative complex in 8 Mile Rock, inclusive of the courthouse. The work is in progress and is expected to continue for the next 4 weeks. Mr. Speaker, assessments are presently being carried out at the Garnet Lavardi Justice Center, the Post Office Shreveport, Harold Gregory Complex, Grand Bahama Sports Complex, and also the seawalls in High Rock. Work will commence shortly after all of the assessments are completed. As for agriculture and fisheries, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Agriculture and Marine Resources has estimated damage to the agricultural sector at nearly $1.3 million on New Providence, Grand Bahama, Exuma, Abaco, North Andros, and Long Island. With respect to the fisheries sector, 73 fishermen in New Providence, Grand Bahama, North Andros sustained damage estimated at some $1.9 million as follows. We have 5 categories. Category A is for amounts exceeding $100,000. And Grand Bahama, we have 3, Andros 1. Category B is for amounts between $53,000 and $87,500. And that category, we have 7 in Grand Bahama. Category C, between $23,500 and $49,000. We have 2 in New Providence, 8 in Grand Bahama, and 2 in Andros. Category D, which is amounts between $12,000 and $20,000. We have 6 in Grand Bahama and 2 in Andros. And category E, which is $800 to $10,000, we have 17 in Grand Bahama and 25 in Andros, for a total, Mr. Speaker, of some 73 fishermen who were impacted, and those are the ones that were reported. And of course, if we missed anybody, I'm sure they will let us know. Details will be provided very shortly on the assistance to persons in these sectors, similar to that provided in the aftermath of Hurricane Joaquin. Exigency order, Mr. Speaker, persons are taking advantage of the exigency order that was issued on October 7, 2016 for the impacted islands, enabling residents who suffered loss or damage to import or purchase goods locally, customs duty and VAT-free up to April 4th of this year. The Bahamas Customs Department has reported the total value of imports on miscellaneous goods at some $8.6 million up to December 16, 2016 for islands under the order, with the exception of North and Central Andros. The Bahamas Customs Department also reported the total value of replacement vehicles and parts at some $480,239 up to the same period. As far as donations, Mr. Speaker, donations for the Hurricane Relief Fund now total some $1.6 million. And unlike last time when Batelco was asked to donate $1 million that they were fined to IRCA, all of these came from individual donors. And so you would see that we were able to raise much more money this time from individuals than was able to be raised through after Hurricane Joaquin. And that's important for the member for East Grand Bahama. Full Gospel, Tabernacle, Palmetto Point, donated $200. Commonwealth Bank donated $100,000. The Embassy of the People's Republic of China donated $49,749. Commonwealth Brewery donated $10,000. CBC Services Limited donated $25,000. Central Bank of the Bahamas donated $150,000. Crooked Island District donated $2,160. Deltec Bank and Trust Limited donated $25,000. Freeport Oil Company Limited donated $100,000. Bank of Bahamas donated $50,000. Gone Bank and Trust Limited donated $100,000. Hollow Esco Partners Limited donated $50,000. Harborside Marine donated $5,000. Iraq Port Development Limited donated $25,000. Bahamas Bulk Materials donated $10,000. Bahamas Concrete Holdings donated $10,000. Island Site Development donated $10,000. New Providence Building Supplies donated $10,000. Moscow's United Construction Company Limited donated $10,000. Embassy of the Republic of Haiti donated $5,000. China Construction America donated $100,000. Buckeye donated some $400,000. Sun Oil Limited donated $50,000. And the amount donated from Buckeye, we were asked to spend that entire $400,000 on the island of Grand Bahama. Trade Zero donated $1,999. First Baptist Church from Washington, D.C. That was organized by the Consul General, Ms. Paulette Zonical, and they donated some $25,000. First Caribbean Bank donated $100,000. Rubis Bahamas donated $50,000. Patrick and Judy from Lauderhill donated $100. The Royal Bank of Canada donated $100,000. And we had $50,000. They say here as anonymous, and somebody donated, or some company donated $50,000, for a total of some $1.64 million donated. We also got, had items donated by organizations and individuals as well. And from the U.S. Aid Office of Foreign Disaster Assistance, the following items were donated: 1,000 blankets, 300 rolls of plastic sheeting, 1,000 hygiene kits, 1,020 kitchen sets, 1,200 water containers, 3 chainsaws, and 30 generator kits. Other in-kind donations received in New Providence include the following: roofing materials including ice and water shield and tarpaulin from Mr. Sabas Bastian and the Island Luck Foundation, 500,000 square feet of roofing material from Jacobs Construction from West Palm Beach, Florida, a 20-foot container of drinking water from Yang's Fine Wine, 672 pieces of lumber and 98 sheets of plywood and various food items from Disney Cruise Lines, 105-gallon bottles of water from Spring Fresh Water Depot, and quantities of ice from various cruise ships that called on the port of Nassau, a 40-foot container and a 40-foot flat rack from the Pathfinders Task Force with a quantity and variety of items including 480 pieces of blue tarp, 382 bundles of shingle, 800 pieces of lumber, 116 sheets of plywood, 100 rolls of felt, 200 rolls of storm guard ice and water shield, 16 saws, 100 comforts and cots, a quantity of food and personal hygiene items, and a flat rack of building materials including 116 sheets of plywood, 34 sheets of sheetrock, and 144 bundles of shingles from a resident of Juno Beach, Florida. In-kind donations received by NEMA in Grand Bahama are as follows: 2 40-foot containers and 1 20-foot container of water, clothing, household items, tools, toys, bed, and towel linen from Stuart Sailfish Club Foundation, 1 20-foot container with ready-to-eat meals and water, and 1 flat rack of building materials from Pathfinders Task Force, 1 40-foot container of canned water from Anheuser-Busch Incorporated, 2 pallets of water from Cheney Brothers, 1 pallet of tarp, hand towels, garbage bags, plastic bags from Statoil, 2 40-foot flat rack of building materials from the Miami Dolphins. We are truly grateful for all donations received. And in conclusion, Mr. Speaker, while progress has been made in the restoration of our islands over the past 3 months, there is still much work to be done in the coming weeks. The major focus will be on the repair program for private homes, and we expect that the pace will be greatly accelerated as more vouchers are issued and contracts for repairs are executed, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
Order that the document be brought up. Member for Grand Bahama? Member for Grand Bahama? Member?
Pine Ridge. Pine Ridge.
Member for Pine Ridge? Thank you, member. Thank you. What did the document do lie on the table? Member for East Grand Bahama?
Yes, Mr. Deputy, thank you very much. Just three points. One, in the minister's statement, he didn't mention the dock at Waterkey in Grand Bahama, which was also damaged. And I just wonder whether that is included in the assessment, has not been assessed yet, or what's the status with that, because it does require a bit of repair. Secondly, the voucher system in respect to Grand Bahama, and speaking particularly for East Grand Bahama, residents are reporting that it's very difficult, if at all, that they're able to get vouchers. They've been assessed, but it seems very slow in them being able to get any kind of assistance. And I just wonder whether what is the system in respect to that, and if there's any efficiencies that are expected in the short term. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, there's a continuing complaint with respect to the trash pickup in the Freeport area. I know a lot of it has to do with private subdivisions or privately owned subdivisions. However, while that may be the case, the reality is I believe that the Grand Bahama Port Authority as well as the government has a responsibility to ensure that the environment is in fact cleaned as soon as possible. And I believe that we're at the stage now where those vegetative piles of debris are now being contaminated with hard materials, which is going to make it very much more difficult to pick up. In addition to that, is creating health hazards in some areas. And I just wonder whether the government, through its resources, is giving any consideration to having that work done in the interest of public health, and maybe with some view to charging back to these private developers if that so be the case. But I just believe that it is unacceptable that this many weeks following that hurricane, that we still have these mounds of debris all over the city. So I just wanted you can answer this. Thanks.
Member for Golden Gates?
Mr. Boucher and the member for Pine Ridge will address with the collection of garbage and the dock at East Grand Bahama. As for the voucher system, we try to be as careful as possible to make sure we have full accounting for what's going on. And one of the things we did in Grand Bahama, which we are revisiting, is we've, whenever the vouchers come in, they're actually prepared by external auditors, external accounting firm. They prepare them, they give them back to us. We then, in turn, give them to administrators who issue them to the individuals. So we don't expect individuals to come all the way back into the main Freeport City to collect the vouchers. They're actually given to the administrators to make sure they make it convenient to issue them out. One of the challenges that I am advised that they were having that we're looking into is that if you look at the number of vouchers that were issued, prepared, first of all, by the external accounting firm, and the numbers that was actually received by us, and when you look at those that were redeemed at the three suppliers, they don't reconcile. So there seems to be a lot of more vouchers being prepared than being redeemed. And so the question is, where is the breakdown? Whether it's because individuals can't be found, the system isn't working, so we're going to have to look at that. But when you look at the numbers were prepared, the numbers far exceed those that are actually redeemed. And so we're looking at trying to see how we can deal with that process and speed it up a bit. As for the cleanup, I spoke to the member from Pine Ridge on that. When I saw the news story on television, somebody brought it, I think Michael brought it to my attention. And one thing we're going to have to consider is whether or not, like you said, we will move. We're looking at that as well, because it's not right. The Port Authority is responsible for the port area. Obviously, they will not take the same position as government and just spend monies cleaning it up. I mean, we have spent in excess of $10 million on Nassau alone. $10 million cleaning up Nassau. And if you look on Tonic Williams Allen Highway, in the front of Mario's, you see the big open area there with a bunch of debris still piled up there. We got a number of sites where we have the debris still piled up. And every time we clear a site, people dump back on them again.
And so, I mean, I don't know how long we could continue to go back over and over again. It's almost like they're running around a circle. It's almost like it's a strategy that they have right now where they move this debris from one side to the next and the next, knowing that we have to come to somebody to clean. I don't know what's happening, but in any case, we spend a lot of money. And so we shouldn't have to spend money in the port area. That's their responsibility. They collect all the profits. They generate all the revenue. They're responsible for cleaning it up. I saw the young man on television a couple of nights ago saying that this person is responsible, the next person, the port will do this, but you're responsible. People don't have the money to do it. You know, you can't reap all the rewards over the years. Now when it's time to spend a couple of dollars, you're trying to say that people must do it now. People can't afford to do it. And so at the end of the day, Dr. Dabbel and I will meet along with the team, and it may be decided that we'll have to just look at cleaning it up and finding a way to build them back and have them reimburse the government. But you cannot allow the debris to stay there indefinitely. I agree with that.
Member for Pioneer.
Golden Isles summed it up quite well.
Golden Gates.
Sorry, as far as the voucher system is concerned, but the member for East Grand Bahama spoke specifically about his people in East Grand Bahama, and we're working very diligently with the administrator, Mr. Roberts. What has happened is, after the social assessment was done, the technical teams went into the area, made the various assessments, and we are giving out vouchers as we speak. What we're finding, just to elaborate from the Minister of Golden Gates, is the fact that the demand for building materials was so great on the island with independent contractors and other different businesses that's going on, that when we issued the vouchers and they went to claim the materials, there was some delay in the materials being at the various bonded warehouses. I think we have really resolved that problem now, and so very soon you will see many of the vouchers being processed at the various bonded warehouses. Now, we opted to use that technique to try to keep the money flowing into the economy rather than individuals going abroad and spending the money abroad. Allow the local bonded warehouses to be able to supply the various vouchers that we've been giving out. As far as Water Key is concerned, the dock was damaged again. We repaired it a few years ago, but of course it was damaged again. I want to assure the member for East Grand Bahama that the Ministry of Works have looked into that, and we are about to issue a contract to repair it. And likewise, for the city of Freeport in terms of the cleanup. Under the Hawksbill Creek Agreement after the hurricane, yes, the vegetative debris was moved very well by the Grand Bahama Port Authority, and now we have building materials. And now the question is whether or not the port is responsible for moving building materials from the site as well. Me and the minister responsible, we have had discussions with it. I've had discussions with the Grand Bahama Port Authority. But I am in agreement with the member from East Grand Bahama as well as the member from Golden Gates that we cannot allow this to happen where the city becomes filthy again. But we have cleaned up the area in East and West Grand Bahama. We have cleaned up West Grand Bahama, Pindus Point, Lewis Yard, 3 to 4 passes, and fast as you clean up, another batch of debris is there, but it's going to be an ongoing effort, and we will continue to ensure that we remove this debris to prevent any environmental issues that could affect the residents in those communities. So the member for East Grand Bahama could be assured that if he know of cases in his constituency who have been assessed, please bring those names to us. We're moving as rapidly as we can. There's some people in the assessments were not at home at the time, and so one may got materials and the other one may have not gotten. But I want to assure the residents throughout Grand Bahama that our team is still on the ground, and it is important for those who have not been assessed, who experienced damage as a direct result of Hurricane Matthew, to please contact social services as well as the Urban Renewal Department so that they can be assessed and the technical team can go out and make a determination of whether or not they qualify for building materials or building materials and labor, or even the possibility of accessing low-interest loans that will be available by the government. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Member for East Grand Bahama.
Right, and this may or may not be appropriate, but connected in that respect to the water system in Sweetings Key. We've been having tremendous challenges with the system in Sweetings Key where the water is on for an hour or two in the morning, and that is very unreliable. I have been on the water and sewage for quite a while now to try and get some resolution to that matter. They have made some interventions, but we still have significant issues there. And so I want to take this opportunity to speak to the minister responsible and the chairman here that we need some intervention in that situation because it has the potential to cause health problems. It has certainly been a tremendous disruption to the lives of the people in Sweeting Ski, and we need to have that matter addressed immediately. It appears to be a combination of equipment and capacity issues, but whatever it is, the people in Sweeting Ski certainly deserve to have a reliable potable water in the system. So thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Yes, Member for Pine Ridge.
Thanks. The issue in Sweetens Key, the government is fully aware of the issue as a direct result of the Arrow plant that is on Sweetens Key. We have had intervention from the Water and Sewage Department as well as our partners, the Grand Bahama Utility Company. We are of the view that one of two things is happening. The water is being produced, and the water supply that once supplied the entire community appears to be insufficient, and we believe that there may be some issues underground with leaks under the ground. Notice a possibility that's still being assessed. And once that is assessed and that proves not to be the point, and we find that no one is actually utilizing the water inappropriately, then what we would do is we would definitely make the recommendation to upgrade the Arrow plant in order to handle the increased capacity that is necessary. But the Water and Sewage Corporation is fully aware of the situation in Sweetens Key. As far as saying it's a hazard, I wouldn't go to that extent. It's something that needs to be addressed. Because we are now in the position where there may be a demand to upgrade the Arrow plant in order to produce the additional capacity necessary to supply the community. But the community of Sweetens Key always have potable water. There has been some times during the day where the water supply may have to be turned off so that the bladders can be recharged and refilled. But information was submitted to the Water Department, and the chairman is aware of it as well as his team. And we want to assure the residents of Sweetens Key, just like how we're producing potable water for certain parts of East and West Grand Bahama, we will definitely have to do the necessary adjustments with the Arrow plant to ensure that the individuals on that key have access to potable water 24 hours a day.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Member for East Grand Bahama.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, not to belabor, certainly, but the leak tests have been done. There is no leaks. They've already confirmed that, both GB Utility and Water and Sewage. So it really comes down to a capacity issue, and there's an investment that is required, as I understand it. And so I believe we can leapfrog all of that in between, and just focus on the requirement to expand the capacity. And there are health issues that are attached to this issue, because they do not have access to water after 11 o'clock in the morning. And it's only on for about an hour or 2 hours. And if you're on the end of the line, you're getting drips. So it has to be addressed, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
Mr. Speaker.
Member for Pine Ridge.
Once again, I'd like to say that there's no health issue. The member indicated that there's no leaks. The report that's coming from Water and Sewage, that report is not conclusive. If he has information that I don't have, I would like for him to share it. But we're waiting for Water and Sewage to give us the final word. Once that is done, we have spoken to the contractor who's responsible for the Arrow plant. If there's a need for the upgrade, the Water and Sewage Department will make the recommendation for the upgrade and provide the necessary supply to the residents of Sweetens Key. The last report that I got, that there is a possibility that there may be leaks at residents' home where the water is leaking from the home, and we need to finalize that. And once that is done, then the recommendations were done, and the chairman of the board is fully aware of what's going on, and the residents in Sweetens Key could be assured that the government would resolve this problem because we have a contractual agreement with the operator from the Arrow plant.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Member for Fort Charlotte.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, through you, I'd like to, I didn't get from the minister responsible for hurricane repair and relief what the total amount is that has been expended in the relief recovery efforts to date. We came to this House and a resolution was brought and passed unanimously for the borrowing of $150 million. I think the Bahamian people are entitled to know how much of that $150 million has to date been spent, and what is the lion's share of the money, what in fact has it been spent on. Can the minister responsible please
provide that information to this House?
Thank you, Honorable Member. Member for Golden Gates.
Mr. Speaker, I feel now like I was sleeping. Because I thought I went through that and I said how much money how many contracts were issued, how much money is spent on cleanup. I thought we went through all that already. I didn't give him a cumulative figure, but if you get the communication, you could just add it up. 1 + 1 is 2. So, everything is there. Everything is there.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Member for Fort
Mr.
Charlotte.
Speaker, clearly, this is a lot of money we're talking about, and I'm assured that the member realizes that Bahamian people are concerned about how their money is being spent. I expect the minister knows the cumulative amount. Can he say, for the benefit of members assembled here today and the Bahamian public, what is that cumulative figure? And the fact that he can't say that causes one to believe that it is not being properly overseen by the minister responsible. That is the concern that I have.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
Mr. Speaker,
Member for Golden Gates.
Because the Haymans elected me too. I keep hearing these people talk about who they represent. People who ain't nobody ever voted for them before, right? But I ran in Golden Gate 3 times. So I represent people too. They elect me, that's why I'm here. They don't, I don't want to sign out these people who ain't never been on the ballot before, because say they represent 100,000 people. Then people who win one election, I represent people too, Mr. Speaker. And I reported, if you look in the communication, I said how much money was spent in each area. It's in the communication, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The member has indicated.
$150 million that we came to this House to borrow by special sitting. Can he say what the total amount is of that $150 million that has been spent and how much is left over? Because Bahamians have said they don't see where the money is going. Can you say in total how much of the $150 million you've spent, sir, and what is left to be spent? That's all I've asked for. Don't tell me how long you've been elected to this House,
but
how much have you spent?
Thank you, Honorable Member. Thank you, Honorable Member.
Mr. Speaker, I just want to say this, right? Yeah. Go ahead. Even though $150 million was approved, we've not drawn down on $150 million. You don't do that. Even when a loan's approved for a bank for me for my mortgage, they don't say, well, the mortgage is 200, here, take 200. No. You draw down as you need it. That's what you do. And so if the Bahamians, the press have a copy of the report, the communication, and I'm sure it'll be in the papers tomorrow, right? And so if Bahamians want a copy, they can come in Parliament, right? And all the figures, I went through the figures individually to make sure that individually how much was spent, Mr. Speaker.
He just stole Thank you, Honorable Member.
Yeah.
Members,
That was all that was designed.
further statements and communication by ministers. Intervention. Member for Angliston.
I actually had a major, or I'll even call it egregious oversight in naming our team because I omitted the name of Lauren Klein, who is a consultant in the Office of the Attorney General, and he was the premier legal consultant and advisor, and I left his name out as part of that team, and he was part of the original team and the negotiating team. So I'd like the record to reflect, and I regret that I don't know what happened there, but he was a very significant member of the team, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Let the record reflect. Thank you, Honorable Member. Further statements and communication by ministers. Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for North Andros and the Berry Islands. Statement and communications.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am pleased to advise that at the 55th meeting of the PAHO WHO, that is the Pan American Health Organization and World Health Organization, held in Washington, D.C., September 26 to October 1st, 2016, the Americas were declared free of endemic measles transmission 22 years after the resolution to eliminate measles, rubella, and congenital rubella syndrome in the region of the Americas. The government of the Bahamas received recognition from the Director General of the World Health Organization and the Director of PAHO for its leadership in achieving this historic milestone. The declaration was presented to the Director General of the World Health Organization, the Director of PAHO, Ministers of Health, and ambassadors in a special meeting during the PAHO Directing Council meeting chaired by Dr. Moiseline Dahl-Regis, the chair of the International Expert Committee. The committee comprised of 7 international consultants from various World Health Organizations who were charged to validate countries of the Americas having eliminated measles. Measles is one of the most infectious diseases known, and its elimination has been a goal of the World Health Organization for decades. Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas was the first country in the world to eliminate rubella and congenital rubella syndrome, and was recognized for its strategy to eliminate congenital rubella syndrome by immunizing children, adult males, and females. This new strategy was adopted and implemented by the Pan American Health Organization in 2001, and the Americas was declared free of rubella by the International Expert Committee in 2014. After declaring the elimination of rubella and congenital rubella syndrome in 2015, the International Expert Committee waited for evidence of the interruption of measles outbreak in Brazil, which had begun in 2013 and lasted for more than a year. After 1 year of targeted actions and enhanced surveillance, the last cases of measles in Brazil was registered in July 2015. With this achievement, and considering that the region has sustained elimination for more than 12 years, the International Expert Committee accepted the evidence presented by the countries and declared the elimination of measles in the Americas. The World Health Organization and the scientific group of experts in Geneva have adopted this strategy for elimination of rubella and congenital rubella syndrome in all regions of the world. Dr. Margaret Chan, in her address to the Directing Council, expressed appreciation to the Bahamas representatives and the Director of PAHO, Dr. Myrta Roses, for encouraging her to support the measles elimination initiative during her rookie year as Director General of the World Health Organization. Additionally, she expressed gratitude to Dr. Moiseline Dahl-Regis for her work in immunization and public health. Dr. Moiseline Dahl-Regis, as many of you would know, is the former Chief Medical Officer of the Ministry of Health at the Government of the Bahamas. She's an exceptional Bahamian professional. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Health commends Dr. Moiseline Dahl-Regis for her work in immunization and public health and congratulates her on this outstanding accomplishment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Order that the communication be brought up. Order that the communication do lie on the table. Further statements and communication by ministers. Chair recognizes the honourable member for Southern Shores.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to take this opportunity to advise members of this honorable House and the public at large that this Sunday, the 22nd of January, on the anniversary of the death of Sir Milo B. Butler, a national hero, the government of the Bahamas, together with the National Heroes Committee, at 3 p.m. will host the commemorative launch of the National Heroes Garden. The venue for the event will be the northeast quadrant of the Botanical Gardens off of Marcus Bethel Way. We had hoped to have this event last year, October, but the site was ravaged by Hurricane Matthew. Invitations for all members were supposed to be delivered this afternoon, but we do not appear to be going through for the full day. And so I've had an opportunity to speak to the leader of the opposition, as well as the leader of the Free National Movement about the matter before the proceedings. And all of those invitations will be given to all members this afternoon as per their respective directions for members opposite. And so the public and all members are invited to attend as we continue to honor our national heroes. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. And all members be so advised. Further statements and communication by ministers? No further statements and communication. Member for Long Island, you indicate your desire to rise.
Not a minister yet, but if you'd allow me the opportunity, sir, to certainly speak to the issue that the member for Southern Shores just spoke to. Mr. Speaker, many, many years ago, the member for Fox Hill, myself, both being not members of this House, came together with a grouping of individuals to commemorate the life of my late grandfather, Sir Milo Bowden Butler, and for his struggles for the people of the Bahamas. Over the years, it evolved, and we ended up getting to a point where there's something called National Heroes Day, which is observed in October. But one of the tangibles of this holiday was the fact that we wanted to be able to have a heroes garden, similar to like what one sees in Jamaica and other parts of the world, maybe even in Green Turtle Key, Abaco actually, where they do have a heroes park. Mr. Speaker, this has been long in coming, but I look forward to certainly participating, even though it seems a little ad hoc in the way that the invitations and everything is being carried out. We certainly will try to be there. We think it's important for the history of our people to be able to have a place where we can go where things are accurately depicted, where heroes and heroines are actually commemorated, and we're able to look at what our history is and where we've come from. So I really look forward to participating in that, and I trust that as we move forward, we will be able to go to such a garden and basically be able to view statues like what we see of Sir Lyndon at the International Airport, Sir Milo and Sir Stafford Sands, and and women who were also heroines, such as Doris Johnson. Hopefully we will have such a garden, and I don't know if that's in the works to happen, but obviously Sunday is the starting point, and so I look forward to that. And this Sunday, our family certainly will be commemorating the death and life of our grandfather, my grandfather. It was in 1979 that he passed away after a lengthy illness. And I remember him with very fond memories. But Mr. Speaker, I just would like to also state that I sat patiently this morning as we went through statements by ministers, and if I may, with your concurrence, when we closed in December for the Christmas holiday, the member for Centerville indicated that we would have had a tabling on the 9th of January of the heads of agreement for the project known as The Point. And I thought certainly this morning that that document would have been laid, seeing that there was no reference made to it at our abbreviated sitting on the 9th of January. Mr. Speaker, it's important that we as legislators and the Bahamian people in particular know exactly what agreements the government of the Bahamas is entering into on our behalf. We heard a statement, our final statement from ministers today was a report from the Minister of Health on something that happened last year at PAHO. And yet we can't get answers as to what's happening in terms of, health delivery in some of our family of islands. But Mr. Speaker, it's important that we not lose track of those things that are promised to us. And one of them certainly is the fact that we should have the heads of agreement tabled for the point. The garage or the parking center is all completed. I imagine from all of the banners that I see as I drive along West Bay Street that they're getting ready to start some construction. I see that you've arrived at the point and all of the PR is taking place, but yet we have no heads of agreement. And certainly there are concessions that have been provided, and we, the Bahamian people, still do not know. Which brings me to the next point, Mr. Speaker. I understand from the dailies that there is now a process for people to be hired at the Bahamar, which is fine, not a problem. But we have yet, Mr. Speaker, in this place, to see the revised or the heads of agreement with regards to what's happening at Bahamar. We're just hearing everything about the concessions that are being provided, and we have nothing which we can look at so we can say definitively as honorable members in this House to our constituents and to the wider Bahamian public exactly what is going on in the name of the Bahamian people. Mr. Speaker, we have got to be able to know this. Election season apparently is upon us, and we're hoping that this doesn't just get swept up in the euphoria of partying and people promoting themselves for re-election. It is important that the Bahamian people be made aware. And having said that, Mr. Speaker, last year I provided you with a list of persons and how we have reconfigured the standing committees of this honorable House. And I wish to advise you, Mr. Speaker, that with that in mind, we know that the PAC committee consists of the honorable member for St. Anne's, the honorable member from Montague, and of course now myself. So, Mr. Speaker, since it appears that we can't get items tabled in this House of Assembly for us to be able to see what is being done in the name of the Bahamian people, we will be convening the PAC committee very shortly. And Mr. Speaker, I'd like to advise you that there are certain things that the PAC committee will be looking to seek answers to, because it's been so long in coming. For example, we will definitely be questioning the financial secretary with regards to the VAT funds which have been collected to date, and we would like to be able to report back to the Bahamian people the manner in which they have in fact been spent. And also, Mr. Speaker, we believe that there are other areas of the PAC that the PAC will certainly be convening to have questions on. So, Mr. Speaker, I say all of that because in member statements, we figured we would have had some information forthcoming, and we sat here patiently, and yet we await that heads of agreement. So PAC will now do much of what we cannot get answers to, and I just wanted to thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me that time.
Member, you meant in communication by ministers, not member statements. Correct? Yeah. Okay. Very well. Thank you, honorable member.
Thank you.
Member, if you pause, member. Chair will recognize you. Member for Southern Shore.
Just if I may, in part in response to the member for Long Island, particularly in relation to the National Heroes Garden that is proposed, the Bahamian public will get their lead from us. And by reference to the gardens and the types of persons that we will obviously commemorate, I note that the member for Long Island referenced political figures. This is not going to be a National Heroes Garden simply to honor politicos in our country, but will honor all national heroes, be they from culture, religion, economics, or otherwise. So I just in case someone got the inference that this is what it was about, I want to dispel that. But I also want to indicate, however, that the plans for the garden is something that we want to be developed by the people of this country together with the committee. It will be the people's National Heroes Garden, Mr. Speaker, and I want to make that clear.
The people's garden. Not the people's time now.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I just wanted to pause just for a moment. The Chair will recognize you, Member. We wanted to not use this opportunity to get into a back and forth with respect to controversial matters because of where we are on the agenda.
No.
I just wanted to make that clear
No, Mr.
as
Speaker.
we go. But Member, you
I
recognize.
just wanted to say thank you, because if the member had followed the Heroes Committee and its formation and its evolution, while I actually talked about his political persons, you will know that we honored such diverse groupings as the Region Bells and people like Lillian Coakley, and we talked about them as being national heroes and heroines. And so essentially, the work and the MO of the Heroes Committee went beyond that, but its origins were in the name of the Sir Milo Bolton Butler. That's where its origins began. And so while I thank you for that clarification, history will demonstrate that it was beyond the political persons that we honored. And as a matter of fact, we went so far as to call them, in our informal way, honorable for life.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Member for Montague, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I rise on a matter of privilege. I had it brought to my attention, Mr. Speaker, that in the newspaper, I think in The Guardian, a week or more ago, there was a statement to the effect that members of the opposition did not appear at the first meeting of the BTC committee. Now, while that is so, I wish to inform this House and the public that the notice which was received with regard to that meeting stated that the first meeting was to be held in October of 2017. Now, I admit when I saw the date of the meeting, I paid no attention to it, wasn't particularly concerned with what the meeting was with regard to, but certainly my attention was not drawn to the fact that it was a BTC meeting. So the reason that no one appeared on behalf of the opposition was because we didn't have proper notice of the actual meeting.
Amen.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Where did you receive that notice from? Oh, you could answer that, Honourable Member. Member for Golden Gates?
Mr. Speaker, actually, the notice did go out in error and had October 2017. But for me, when I saw that, I inquired right away that it couldn't be right? And so the member for North Eleuthera, he also was notified. He saw that same thing, but obviously, the meeting couldn't be for October 2007. It was a typo, right? And so I find it strange that the member, I find it strange that the member for Montague wouldn't have done the same thing. If you get an email saying a meeting in October 2017, and in January, I mean, why wouldn't you right away ask, well, is this a typo, or I'm just saying, Mr. Speaker. So all I'm saying though is the member for North Eleuthera gave an excuse. He said he couldn't make it because he was traveling. So the reason why the opposition wasn't there wasn't because of that. The opposition from North Eleuthera wasn't there because he was traveling. That's why the member for North Eleuthera wasn't there.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Member for Montague?
Involved in this type of nonsense. Clearly, it's not my obligation to go and look around and say, oh, what date did you mean to have this meeting? If the member knew that it was wrong, surely he would have sent out a notice informing of the mistake. I had no idea that it was in fact the BTC meeting. All I saw was there was a meeting in October of 2017.
That's a big difference.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Communication by the clerk. Messages for communication by the clerk. Members, communication by the clerk.
Speaker, I beg leave to report delivery to the Honorable Senate of messages 68, 69, and 70.
Thank you, sir. Messages from the Governor General, messages from the Senate. We have 4 messages. One message that speaks to 5 bills that were debated in the Honorable Senate. Motion for leave of absence, leaves to resign seat, and new writs. Presentation of petitions, presentation of reports of committees, first reading of bills. Second reading and committal of bills. None. Committee of the whole House. Consideration of Senate amendments, resolutions, member statements. Chair recognizes Honorable Member for Long Island.
Speaker, I stand here, as I always do, on behalf of the wonderful people of Long Island. And certainly, Mr. Speaker, it gives me the first opportunity to be able to bring greetings to all of the residents and constituents of Long Island in this year, 2017, wishing them well and trusting that we will certainly have a much better year as we look ahead than that last year as we look back. Mr. Speaker, already for this year, we have had several individuals, outstanding individuals in our community who have passed away, and I'd like to recognize and pay homage to them and, just extend heartfelt sympathy to the family members. One of our residents from North Long Island, Mr. Stephen Pratt, who I understand will be funeralized on the 28th of this month, Mr. Speaker, next week, the end of the month. I'd like to extend sympathies to his family at this time and trust that they will be comforted in the fact that he has, in fact, finished his course, he's fought a good fight, and that he's gone on to his eternal reward. Mr. Speaker, the last time that I was in Long Island, I drove the length and breadth to look at some of the reconstructive works that are being carried out post-Hurricane Joaquin. And I might add, Mr. Speaker, that the seawalls are definitely going in. We know that these are important. But we also note, Mr. Speaker, that the trenches that were dug for the culverts that were done post-Hurricane Joaquin and prior to the commencement of this seawall work has created an immense amount of erosion on the main highway in Long Island. And Mr. Speaker, I thank the minister, I thank the government for ensuring that we get these seawalls done in Long Island. They are necessary because we do have a lot of low-lying areas that tend to be flooded with swamp. But I also invite the government, as they continue this remedial work on our island, that just as some of them said they should perhaps visit these islands, I invite them to visit Long Island to see the challenges that we are having post-Hurricane Joaquin. Certainly, there is more that can be done, and we trust that of that $150 million that has been borrowed, that certainly we'll be able to accomplish more stuff and perhaps even get that clinic replaced in South Long Island. Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to say that we are getting ready as we go into this political season, and I would like to say that I guess many people are waiting, especially given the fact that we have had a change in the political structure on this side. But I'd wish to advise, Mr. Speaker, that certainly this member, having represented Long Island for the past 4.5, close to 5 years, will in fact be seeking re-election in that wonderful constituency. Because like many of our family islands, Mr. Speaker, there is a lot of work to be done. There is a lot to be done in terms of what needs to happen on these family of islands. And so, Mr. Speaker, I thank you very much for allowing me this time to speak to Long Island, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Member statements. Chair recognizes Honourable Member for North Nassau Village.
I'll yield for member for Golden Gate.
Member yield. Chair recognizes member for Golden Gates.
Speaker, I have a copy of the email that was sent out, and this is important, to the select committee on PDC. And before I read it, I want to know if the member want to change his position and say that it didn't have a subject, he didn't know which meeting they were referring to. I could read it, because it's here. And maybe he would like to see it first before he changed that position. Because he gave the Bahamas the impression that he got a notice
They didn't have
about
a subject.
meeting and didn't have a subject.
Member, your microphone. Your microphone.
He gave the Bahamas the impression, not the impression, he said emphatically that he didn't know what the meeting was all about. He read the email and he couldn't tell what the meeting was all about. And I have the email right here, Mr. Speaker. It says, subject, meeting of select committee on BTC. Listen, if it was a political figure, I would do it. We ain't gonna do that. We ain't getting into that. Right? It was a typo, but it says the chairman of the House Select Committee on BTC has called an initial, twice in the subject and in the body. The chairman of the House Select Committee on BTC has called an initial meeting of the committee for Thursday, the 5th of October, 2017. Now, if it's a select committee on BTC and you see October, wouldn't you call right away, as the member did for North Eleuthera, and say, are you sure it's the 17th of October, the 5th of October, 2017? And so I just don't want the record to reflect that a notice went out and it didn't state what the meeting was all about, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, honourable member. Member statements.
We didn't send that. We ain't gonna do that.
Yeah, this is bordering on ridiculous. Members.
And the member, in fact, indicated that he saw the mistake, and yet he didn't have the foresight to go and have the party that sent out the notice send a corrected notice.
Thank you.
All I saw was the date. I didn't go and, why would I be concerned about any meeting that's going to be held in October?
Thank you, honourable member. Member statements. Member for Nassau Village. Members. Nassau Village has the floor.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I get out of here myself.
Members, there's a member on the floor.
Mr. Speaker, I just would like to thank you for recognizing me at this time, giving a member statement to Nassau Village. I just wanted to be very brief, Mr. Speaker, and talk about a few of the concerns that has been brought to my attention by my constituents lately. Mr. Speaker, one of them being garbage collection. And I just want to inform my constituents who have personally communicated with me and my team that I've spoken to Minister Dorset, and he has assured me, Mr. Speaker, that the pace of the collection will increase soon. Also, Mr. Speaker, similar to the member for Golden Gates mentioning about persons continuing to dump where we would have cleaned. So, Mr. Speaker, I just also want my constituents to know that we are working assiduously to clean the entire constituency of Nassau Village, but sometimes area where we clean, Mr. Speaker, persons don't just come back and dump stuff. They come back and bring other stuff other than green waste. We've been having some complaints, Mr. Speaker, about persons bringing household garbage. And this, Mr. Speaker, is obviously causing a more difficult problem than just green waste. I just want to report, it may not be persons from our constituency, but persons who may be doing this, Mr. Speaker, I just want them to know that we have reported the matter to the police because my constituents are sick and tired. They cannot live in the stench. And every time we move it, somebody put it back. So, Mr. Speaker, if they're caught doing it, they will be prosecuted, and we are encouraging them to stop. Let's keep the Bahamas clean. Mr. Speaker, about home repairs, I just want my constituents to know that the minister who's responsible is even mentioned in the House today, and I have brought to his attention some of the repairs that my constituents are waiting on. He has assured me, Mr. Speaker, that in the upcoming weeks, the pace of that will increase. So I want them to know that as well. And finally, Mr. Speaker, yesterday I had put on Facebook an encouragement to persons to go out and make the application for Obama, Mr. Speaker. And I just want to encourage other persons who have not made an application, who have not updated their application, to do so, Mr. Speaker. Let's try and see now that there are some jobs being made available, if we can get some of them in my constituency of Nassau Village. Mr. Speaker, I'm also encouraging anybody that may have any difficulty accessing the website or filling out the application to please come and see me, and we will help you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, honourable member. Member statements. Chair recognizes the honourable member for South Andrews, South and Central Andrews, and Mangrove Key.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I'd like to, my 2 minutes are allocated to say a special thank you to the member for North Andrews and Berry Islands, the Minister of Health. who we had a great time in sharing with last evening with the Right Honorable Prime Minister, for a doctor now being assigned once again to the district of South Andros, my hometown. I want to thank him publicly for that on behalf of the people in my community of South Andros. Mr. Speaker, as we talk about the doctor, the issue of repairs that are needed to the Johnson Bay Clinic, Mangrove Key Clinic, and also Central Andros clinics are still not resolved, and we want those matters to be resolved. And we would want those issues to be dealt with, or like somebody said, soonest or post-haste, as the persons in these communities are expecting something to be done, especially in Mangrove Key, and the repairs that must be done in the... I didn't interrupt you, Long Island. Please don't do it to me, please. And you're not going to distract this good member, okay? Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, if you may, please ask the member for Long Island. When she was speaking, I did not interrupt. And I...
Member.
The devil, I will not be distracted. The devil is a liar today. Mr. Speaker, I note the fact that the people of my community are still asking about the issue of taxi plates for the community. Mr. Speaker, the issue of standard taxi plate, the moratorium issue cannot be directed also to the Family Island districts like we have it here in New Providence. Persons in the Family Island in my district should not be leasing plates or having to borrow cousin or family plates at this stage still in the Family Islands. Mr. Speaker, this matter has been hanging out there and looming over our heads for too long. The Family Islands is a separate matter, and I think it's something that we should be given consideration for. People like Elin Anderson and others, and Lee and my family and Andros, should be given their taxi plates in the family so they could be empowered and to work honestly. And Mr. Speaker, something we need to look at quickly. And we were heartened, Mr. Speaker, by the fact that the Prime Minister addressed the issue of giving clear title deeds to the people in Andros, where we have much land. And persons have been asking for papers so that they can go to the banks to upgrade their homes and expand their small businesses in the community of South Central and Mangrove Key Andros. Mr. Speaker, we are still anticipating that all will go well and we can see the commencement of the water process and the repairs in South Andros in particular next week, and the road works that are going on in Central Andros. Mr. Speaker, before I take my seat, the issue of vendors, food vendors being paid, since there has been a change from the process being directed by the Ministry of Social Services, the lunch vendors, pardon me, is now being directed, being directed through the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology. And we have been hearing that the process has been taking a little long for our people to get paid. And Mr. Speaker, I am hoping that this process could be corrected and the bureaucracy would fall away, because persons in the Family Islands would need their assistance in getting these little things done. The busing situation in Deep South Andros and garbage collection in Central Andros are issues I need to put on note or to record today in this honorable place, because they become issues of major concern in my district. Mr. Speaker, in life, there's also death. And I'd like also to publicly extend my condolences to all those who passed posthumously, but most importantly to the family of the late Mr. Joseph Boyce Lewis, the father of my good friend, Dr. Nigel Lewis, and also my very good friend and former past college mate and friend, Denise Lewis Johnson, attorney at law, who would have been buried on Sunday past at the Hillview Seventh-day Adventist Church. And to his wife Clara, who I highly respect as a mother, our thoughts and our prayers with the Lewis family, and by extension the family of North Andros. May his soul today, like those who passed on, rest in peace, but most importantly, Mr. Speaker, rise in glory. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Member statements. Chair recognizes Honourable Member for East Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, several issues. One, I would just like to raise the issue with the through the government, through the Minister for Grand Bahama, to the Port Authority and those that may be responsible for the lighting on the highways, particularly going out towards the east. It is a very dark and lonely road, and so I hope that in short order we can get the lights that were there, which were already insufficient, reestablished, because it is a very dangerous road. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I share the member for South Andros and Mangrove Key concerns with respect to Crown land grants. There are still a number of grants that are outstanding where, in East Grand Bahama, where residents have made application and they can't seem to get their properties identified. That is a matter that has been vexing for some time. Promises have been made with respect to clearing the matter up, but we don't seem to be getting the kind of closure on those matters that we need, particularly in one particular instance where an individual wants to actually construct a business in one of the settlements that would help to employ a couple of people. And I think it's important that we settle these matters so we can help to progress these settlements. I have similar issues with respect to the lunch vendors. The matter has been raised by, again, South Andrews. It seems to be a national issue. And I don't know if it's a matter of the lunch vendors being transferred from social services to education, but it is causing disruption to those kids who are dependent upon that program. And so we certainly encourage the government to take a look at that matter. The other matter, Mr. Speaker, is with respect to voter registration. Mr. Speaker, I'm getting a number of complaints with respect to voter registration. And that is not only with respect to this issue that has been continuing to rise with respect to the dress of females who may be trying to register. Mr. Speaker, for the life of me, I don't understand what the dress of an individual has to do with their constitutional right. And I know that the minister responsible has spoken to this matter, and so it is surprising that it is still being, still arising, and people are being turned away as a result of whatever dress they may have on. Mr. Speaker, that is unacceptable in our democracy. I understand that there are standards of decency that we would all like to see, but at the end of the day, that has nothing to do with anybody's constitutional right. If I want to go down to registration naked, it has nothing to do with the right that I have to vote. And I don't see why that should be have anything to do with my rights, Mr. Speaker. And so I would suggest, Mr. Speaker, that again, an appeal be made to the registrar that his job is to register people, not to find reasons not to register. And so again, Mr. Speaker, I just want to make that point, and I would hope that the minister responsible would again make the point strongly to the parliamentary register that while again we certainly want to encourage decency, that is not the standard that prevents somebody from being registered. And secondly, Mr. Speaker, in the same vein, we're getting tremendous reports from individuals in Grand Bahama anyway, how long it takes to register. People are complaining that it's taking hours and 2 hours to get registered. Mr. Speaker, that is just unacceptable. People are being very, very frustrated by that. People are turning away and saying, you know, they'll come back or they can't be bothered. Mr. Speaker, there is I want to say an allegation that we do not have enough staff at the Parliamentary Registration Office in Grand Bahama. Mr. Speaker, I am led to understand that mobile registration in evenings has been discontinued until February when they hope to get more staff. Mr. Speaker, again, we're trying to get the registration numbers up, and we have to do whatever is necessary to make that happen. And so if it means transferring individuals within the public service to parliamentary registry, as has been the practice in the past, that needs to be done. It needs to be done expeditiously because we are approaching the season of election campaigning, and we all need to know who is going to be eligible to vote, and even for the Boundaries Commission, which I've been fired from. But nonetheless, they need to know what numbers they're looking at. And so we, again, I want to encourage the minister, the parliamentary register, to facilitate as best we can the process of registration, to make it as efficient as possible, and not to find reasons not to register people. Because again, that is the job of the political parties and those who may be interested to challenge if they believe that there is an issue in the register. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, before I take my seat, I do want to express condolences on behalf of my family and East Grand Bahama, and certainly on behalf of the Free National Movement, to the members, the family of Pastor Wilbur Outen and the Freeport Bible Church in Grand Bahama, a very noteworthy, an upstanding citizen, a religious leader in our community. Pastor Oughton has been very instrumental in what they call the Pastors Forum, which seeks to involve the religious community in community building and finding solutions to social issues that may be affecting our island. And his presence, very calm demeanor, very studious, intelligent young man. I am sure that his presence and his leadership in that grouping and in the religious community and in the wider community of Grand Bahama is going to be tremendously missed. And certainly on my behalf and my family, we want to say condolences to his wife Barbara and the children and to the extended family of Freeport Bible Church. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Member statements. Chair recognizes Honourable Member for Mike Howe.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you very much for brief intervention. Mr. Speaker, there are several things I'd like to mention. The first amongst which is I'd like to extend sympathies to the families of Mr. Rufus Colby of Megwana, together with the family of Mrs. Judy McPhee. They're both from Megwana. They both died this week. And I want to extend sympathies to those families on their passing. And I pray that the Lord will sustain them in their hours of bereavement. Mr. Speaker, as far as my constituency is concerned, Megwana, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to tell the people of Megwana that I've just spoken to the minister responsible for aviation, and the terminal building for Megwana as part of the aviation development of Megwana is ready, and the airport has been completed over the last several years or so, and now the terminal building is to be constructed, and we are going to have a meeting in Megwana shortly to show the plans to the people of Megwana, so that if there is anything they think we could do to improve, or otherwise the aesthetics, they will have an opportunity to do that before it goes to tender or the bidding process. We hope to do that in the next several weeks, so that they will become a part of what we're trying to do. Mr. Speaker, with respect to Crooked Island, the road construction or reconstruction in Crooked Island is presently ongoing. Mr. Speaker, the hurricane really damaged the Crooked Island Road much more than we first anticipated, because the contract was given for the redevelopment of the roads which they knew were damaged by the hurricane. But as they repair the bridge and could get over the bridge, Mr. Speaker, it is discovered that the water rush broke the roads in about 7 or 8 different pieces, maybe just 200 or 300 feet long. But even though you get over the bridge, you can't get the cove where the ferry goes until those broken pieces are mended together. I've spoken with the Minister of Works, and he has advised that his engineers are looking at it, and they're going to try to mend the broken parts of the road within the next several weeks or so that ferry services could be returned to Acklands and Crooked Island. And I will stay on that case until we can get some relief there. Mr. Speaker, it's also important for me to say that the water installation for Crooked Island has begun. Mr. Speaker, Colonel Hill, Cabbage Hill, and the surrounding settlements had never had water in living memory. And Mr. Speaker, for generations, they have been dependent on the well fields and pumps and all of that. I'm so glad, Mr. Speaker, that the government has seen it fit to install portable water. And I am going to name that Grey Pure. Not Aquapure, Grey Pure, when it's finished. And the water goes through the pipe. And I say that jokingly, but the truth is, I am glad it is happening while I am the Member of Parliament. So it becomes part of my legacy, that I am able to put water in places that it has never been before. And so, Mr. Speaker, I'm just glad to be able to say that to the people of the country. Mr. Speaker, with respect to Inagua, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I took the plans with respect to the high school for Inagua, and the people who attended that meeting, they were very excited about what's going to happen there. Now, Mr. Speaker, let me say this. 5 years ago, there was a contract awarded for the construction of a high school in Inagua by the PLP government. When the government changed in 2007, the former administration stopped, reviewed, and canceled that contract. And so I am just saying, the school. And so, Mr. Speaker, I only wanted to put that in there because every time this government comes to office, it seeks to do things that sometimes the other government don't think is important. And so I am glad that it is going to happen, and I am advised that the contract will be signed within the next couple of weeks, and the bidding process is over, and the construction will soon begin on that high school. And so the people of Inagua, we are praying that you will get your school this time, and there will be no stop, review, and cancel. That's the point I'm making. You will get your school this time. And so, Mr. Speaker, finally, in Acklands, Mr. Speaker, I've spoken to Dr. Gomez and some of his officers from
North
the
Andros.
ministry.
North
Acklands, sorry, the member for North Andros, sorry. And, Mr. Speaker, I am glad to say that a doctor for Acklands has been selected, and he should be in post. Let me just be cautious. They didn't say a date, but they say within the next several weeks, because they have selected a doctor. And that is important, Mr. Speaker, because Acklands had a doctor in office for more than 6 months, and we need to be grateful that the government, in its attempt to make sure that these things are corrected, they have found one, and we're glad to hear that. Finally, Mr. Speaker, Cable Bahamas. Cable Bahamas, Mr. Speaker, has not been either able, willing, or a combination of both to provide services to Acklands for the last year or so. And I have been on their case, Mr. Speaker, and I'm going public with this now because I'm just tired of an excuse. They say reason, but I say excuses, because you can't have the same reason for 1 year. The first time they said the part was wrong that they got, that was about 4 or 5 months ago. Now they're giving me a reason that Batelco is saying they can't use their pole or something. So Batelco and Cable Bahamas are now fighting over rights, I guess, while the people of Acklands suffer. It is not acceptable. I'm hoping that they will sort out whatever the differences are, and the cable to Acklands people could be restored. That's really what I'm hoping for. And I am only a voice, and I'm hoping if Cable hears me and Batelco hears me, they will call each other today and say, let's sort this out. That's the hope. That's right, because that's right. The people ought to be the object of importance, because no matter that they may not have a good economy there, I believe they pay their bills if there is a bill to be paid, because Acklands are proud people, and they will pay their bills. So let's get it moving, Batelco. Finally, Mr. Speaker, Long Key, I know you've suffered long since the hurricane. Your roads have been terribly impassable, but I spoke with the minister responsible for works, and a contract is being considered. I don't have a timeline yet for the repairs or the restoration of Long Key roads, and I believe that if I continue to talk to the powers that be and those who are able to do so, as soon as monies are available, Mr. Speaker, I'm sure that a contract will be signed for the redevelopment, restoration of the Long Key roads. You see, at least I'm a part of a government that tells me what's going on. It seemed to me, Mr. Speaker, that some people, when they speak in here, speak like they don't even know what was happening in their government when they were in it. And so I am aware, at least I am aware. And so as soon as they can, I am sure it will be done. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I thank you very, very much for the intervention.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Member statements. Chair recognizes Honourable Member for Bamboo Town.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today, Mr. Speaker, really to just extend my condolences to Bishop Hepburn. Actually, he was in the chamber. I saw he just left on the passing of his wife. Bishop Hepburn is truly a pillar, a spiritual pillar and strength within the constituency of Bamboo Town, and indeed he is so in the nation at large. And so I want to extend my sincere condolences to him on the passing of his wife. I'd also like to extend my condolences to another gentleman who is also a pillar in the Bamboo Town community, Mr. Culmer from Domingo Heights. He lost his wife last year, and then last night he ended up losing his 13-year-old son, and so I want to extend my condolences to him. And in the same vein, I would also like to extend my condolences to Mr. Bernard Dorset, Mr. Porky Dorset, who's also a businessman in Bamboo Town, who does an awful lot for the community. He lost his mother, and Nora Dorset, and so I extend my condolences to him as well. May they, as the member for South and Central, Andres would have said, would they, they rest in peace and rise in glory. The other issue, Mr. Speaker, I would want to bring to the attention of the House, and I hope at the next sitting that we're able to at least bring the boundaries report, because, according to the Constitution, Article 70, subsection 1, says that the Boundaries Commission must report no more than 5 years. And the last time the Boundaries Commission reported was on Wednesday the 16th, November the 16th, 2011. And so right now we're operating outside of the boundaries of the framework of the Constitution. So I would think that the next time we meet in this place, in 2 weeks or however, so we would be able to have that boundaries report tabled so that we could progressively move forward, so that we would know those boundary lines for the battle that is to come.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Member statements. Chair recognizes Honourable Member for South Beach.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Just very briefly, Mr. Speaker, I just want to ask those concerned to please, for God's sake, after sending numerous communication to BTC and now BPL, for God's sake, it gets late in the evening. The person who are responsible for lighting Marshall Road, Mr. Speaker, from Mount Nebo Church down to the Adventure Learning Center, it's dark. I would have spoken with the previous person who was in charge, who said he would have had it done. That didn't happen. And I'm begging again after sending communication to have it done. Because, Mr. Speaker, it's dangerous on the streets. And now the streets are without light. These people can't, I'm just begging them to please light the streets so that the people don't walk in darkness. That's all I'm asking, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Member statements. Chair recognizes Honourable Member for Fort Charlotte.
To the registration of voters. The government had said some time back through the Attorney General that they were looking into the constitutionality of using the prior register that the 2012 elections were based on. There has been no report subsequent to that initial statement to the effect of what their inquiries were in relation to whether it could, in fact, prove possible to use that old register. It is clear, based on statements, even from the chair, it is clear that a major reason why there has not yet been a tabling of the Boundaries Commission report is due to the slowness of voter registration. I'd just like to know whether the government could advise this House and the public whether they are still giving consideration to using the old register, seeing that we are not even at 60% of the prior voter roll.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Member for Seabreeze.
Thank you.
My
Mr.
apologies.
Speaker. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to urge the residents of Seabreeze and definitely the persons who are eligible to vote in the entire Bahamas to get registered. The efforts that are being put forward by the Parliamentary Registration Department, I know there were incidents where people have been frustrated in the process, and I want to appeal to those persons who are working with the Parliamentary Registration Department to register people, to recognize that it is everybody's right who, once they're entitled to vote under our Constitution, to be registered, and that every effort should be made to encourage them and to register them as soon as possible. I've had incidents of persons in my constituency who have complained about the situation and them having to return for various reasons, being frustrated. And so I want to encourage everybody to do the right thing, to do what is necessary for us to be able to have everybody exercise what is their constitutional right here in this Commonwealth. Mr. Speaker, I also wanted to thank the constituents of Seabreeze who would have attended the weekend's events on the park of the Edward Charles Carter Park in Seabreeze, where we had a children's party, and then we also started what we call our New Year's Live Hoops Jamboree, which is a basketball competition which is being put on by myself as the Member of Parliament, which involves not only different teams from the constituency, various areas in the constituency, but also we have various teams from other constituencies who are participating. And it turned out to be a very, very great event. There were 20 teams in total that registered and have come out. Saturday was the opening. We held another session on Monday, another session tonight, another session on Friday, and then on Saturday is the grand finale where the championship game will be played and trophies issued to those persons who are outstanding during the tournament. So I want to thank Mr. Wilton Russell and his team from the Street Legends organization who helped to organize it and has been very, very good in terms of ensuring that each night that the tournament has been put on, that we have had the teams present and all of the affairs conducted in a great a way with integrity, as well as in being able to encourage the young men in the constituency to come out and to participate in what I think is a very, very beneficial exercise. So Saturday, the grand finale, and I think that it's going to be very exciting. Mr. Speaker, I also wanted to just briefly indicate to the Minister of Works that I wanted to thank him for his response in getting the lights turned on there, the traffic light at the intersection of Charles Sanders Highway and Gulf Coast Boulevard, which was off for a long time after the hurricane for whatever reason. I understand that there was a difficulty in getting parts, but once we continued to agitate, finally that light was put back on, and I think it's very important to mention it because there were, several traffic mishaps at that intersection after the hurricane and during the time, and the light was not operational. So I'm glad that that is now back up and working. And Mr. Speaker, then it's just a matter of just giving condolences to the families who would have suffered bereavement over the course of the last several weeks. I note in particular, and this is not to single out anybody but Mr. Speaker, I had spoken about the fact that we've had 2 young men in the constituency who have been victims of murder. Having statistics to date, I believe we've already had 11 for the year. So, Mr. Speaker, it's so heart-rending because the majority of these young men are at that stage in their lives where, they're just sort of almost on the prime of their existence and their human journey. And it is just so sad what is happening, and it seems that it's just gratuitous violence. And so, Mr. Speaker, activities like the basketball jamboree, which is being put on, really emphasizes how, our young men could be engaged in positive exercises instead of looking at, gang banging and doing all these negative things, which really and truly does not benefit the country, does not benefit them, and just simply really is everything that we don't want to be as a people. And so I want to encourage our young men to really consider, their activities, consider how they respond to each other, how they deal with conflict resolution, and just see if it is that they cannot put a value on human life. And once you learn, Mr. Speaker, to value other people's lives and to just think about it in the way that God intended us to, which is to honor each other and to basically treat people as the way you want to be treated. If some of us was to look, at life that way, I think we'll have a lot of these conflicts resolved without bloodshed and without the loss of life. And so I want to really, especially to the young men in my constituency, to encourage them to look to the positive exercises that we will carry out in the constituency instead of the negative things. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. We have, I'll just allow a few more because I know the member for Montague has been waiting. I see the member for Pine Ridge is also prepared to rise. Member statements? Yeah.
Thank you.
Member for Montague, you may.
Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as the member for...
So